Commissioners. The commission will be on recess and there will be no meetings on December 22nd and December 29th. The next Board of Police Commissioners meeting will be held on January 5th, 2016. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Johnson, Sobroff, Figueroa Villa, Kim, and Salzman are present, and we have a quorum. Number one on the agenda, Commission comments.
Thank you. Do we have any Commissioner comments this morning?
Just two. I thought that with the opening of Star Wars, the biggest opening in the history of the entertainment industry, which is so important to Los Angeles, there were no significant events, and I think that that's a real tribute because that was a big deal, and I think our guys did a great job. Number one. Number two. On Sunday morning, I watched Mike Downing on NBC talking about counterterrorism. Because he's nationally recognized in counterterrorism, and I thought that he did a really wonderful job for the department and for the public in talking about the issues of terrorism issues in Los Angeles and how we deal with them.
Thank you. Any other Commissioner comments? Do we have any public comment?
We have four public comment cards. We have Paula Miner, the Red Chief Hunt, Jova Smith. Actually, it's six. Jamie Garcia, Mariela Saba, and Hamid Khan.
Good morning.
Good morning. I come again as a representative of Black Lives Matter. Since this is our last commission meeting in 2015, and Black Lives Matter, Youth Justice, LA Can, and Stop LAPD Spying have been coming consistently for over a year. I would kind of like to sum up some of our reactions and talk about things that we hope will be addressed in 2016. There are a lot of open issues. There are a lot of things that we have brought up, not just us here, but have been brought up in the community at wide that remain open. We come here because this is where we're supposed to come. You all create the policy. You all make the decisions, and you all are supposed to be the community's representative in this system. That's why we're here consistently, and that's why we make these requests. There's still issues outstanding. I can identify them by name: Ezell Jones, Brother Africa, Rizal Jones, Norma Guzman, and Brandon Glenn. These are just a few of the situations that we feel are very, very serious. I'm sure there are many more that remain open and unresolved into 2016. Again, I'd like to make the same request that I've made before. First of all, that the commission consider holding some of its commission meetings at a time and place that's more accessible to the various aspects of our community at large. Again, we talk about the difficulty coming down here at 9:30 in the morning on Tuesday for those in our community who work, who go to school, who have children, etc. The other request I'm making, again, is a methodology, that the commission create a methodology for responding to some of the community requests and inquiries. Many of the people in our community are suggesting they put things in writing. So we need to know how will we be answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Red Chief Hunt.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to all you guys. That picture up there needs to go because we have a racist station up there. The Pacific Area Division is racist. Chief Beck, you need to check yourself and get that fixed for next year. It's one of the demands. I'm going to be nice today. Thank you, Matt Johnson, for all your help. Looking forward to next year, changing things, getting things back. I want my station to be integrated. I want it to be racially protected, not biased policing. I want my station to turn back to normal. Tiki, you've been here a long time. Get my Pacific Division back to where it's supposed to be. It's land of the happy, not land of the sad. Number two, things we have to correct right now and right here in the police commission is Internal Affairs Department. When I go over there and can't file a complaint and sit down, something's wrong with that. And the person that I'm filing a complaint against is taking the complaint. That's against policy and procedure. The next thing I want to talk about is becoming a Captain 1 and a Captain 3 all in the same bounds. You're supposed to transfer out the station. You don't come a Captain 1 and a Captain 3 all in the same time. So, to all my elderlies up there, you guys take care of that. And you guys know who I'm directing that to. I've been down here since 2004. I'm not leaving until this shit get corrected. So, get it done. Matt, appreciate you, brah. Tiki, appreciate you. Faye Singer, appreciate you. Get it done.
Thank you.
Jovo Smith.
Good morning.
JoJo Smith with Los Angeles Community Action Network and Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. You know, we sit here today and we look at the shields y'all are sitting behind. You know, you're supposed to be working for the city, not for LAPD. You know, it should have a city seal, not an LAPD seal. I mean, this is bogus. You know, it shows who you're working for. It shows that you don't care about the communities. All you care about is what LAPD is doing. And you keep allowing Chief Beck to do what he wants to do. Y'all are supposed to be working for us, not for LAPD. Y'all are supposed to take recommendations and make sure that Chief Beck, make sure that they hold the police force accountable. Y'all not doing your job. You need to stop letting Chief Beck run y'all and start doing your fucking job.
Thank you.
Jamie Garcia.
Good morning.
Jamie Garcia with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. So I think right now I'm going to be redundant because that's what the community has to be. And we're still not heard, even though we come and we're continually saying, presenting our similar concerns. So it's about action. We come here, we bring our requests, just like people are saying, and nothing is being done. We're organized, we're substantive, we're direct, we're loud, and we're seen by everyone else. We're seen by media, we're seen by the community, but we're not seen by you. We're not seen by anybody on this commission. You know, and I speak to not only you, Matt Johnson, but I speak to Robert Saltzman, I speak to Kathleen Kim. We have asked this entire commission, meet with us. We've sent it in letter, we've sent it in email, we've been here, we've been consistent, and we've said meet with us. We have a list of demands. Black Lives Matter, Stop LAPD Spying, LA Can. We have 3 demands that we came together as a community that we would like to see discussed, we would like to see moved on. First, we want to see the change of power of discipline back to the commission. We want you to hold hearings on the sabotaging of the consent decree. And we want to meet at a time that is convenient for the community. And this last one we can really move on, as I've said before. We've sent another email, Matt Johnson. We've sent one directly to you. We've said pick a date, and then from there we can decide where we're going to meet. We can decide, again, it's about the convenience of the community, not the convenience of the police commission. So answer our emails. I feel like there's a bit of fear. There's a bit of fear from the community as to why you won't meet with us. Maybe it's because we're powerful, maybe because we're organized, or rather it's the silence that you hide behind, or it's this glass castle that you hide in. I'm not really sure because it's very simple. Many people have done it. People have done it through the LAPD. They have come to our meetings and they've sat and they've listened to our demands. So I don't see this as something out of the ordinary. I don't see it as something unusual. I see it as fear, and I don't know why you fear the community. You shouldn't fear the community, especially when they are very substantive, when they're very direct, and you know what we're looking for.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Good morning, everyone present here today.
Good morning.
I want to echo our sisters in noticing that we have been here week after week after week after week, naming our loved ones who have died in the hands of LAPD. And I want to echo that we are requesting, demanding a meeting, a most necessary meeting, because we've been here week after week. And this takes a toll on all of our energy, but we know we're here representing so many people, so we're making the sacrifice of being present. And we need the same now. We need to be meeting outside. This is how you can give back to what the community is saying right now. I'm here following up on last week where we presented the drone report by the community, and we're following up to see if you have read any of it. We have received silence from the LAPD department. The community went ahead and went to the mayor's mansion. We marched from Wilshire and Western visibly in the streets, showing that LA is saying no drones. We've been super aware of the Dragonflyer 2, the 6X2 drones that are in your possession. And as we said last week, and we will continue to say, we want these drones destroyed or sent back to their manufacturers. The community is very clear. We want peace and justice, and these drones will continue to create more war in our streets by the state who is perpetuating this war on us. So that's why we continue to be here, because this war is very real on our bodies and all of us here. I want to echo that the community is very organized, and you need to meet with our communities. Last week, when a whole bunch of police showed up at the mayor's mansion, they showed up ready to arrest us, and we were families present there. So we de-escalated the potential violence by sharing these Christmas carols with all the mayor's neighbors and doing education one-on-one with them. So I would love for you to join us to echo that. We wish you a drone-free LA. We wish you a drone-free LA. We wish you a drone-free LA. And no more shootings.
I'm going to ask you to leave.
Silent drones.
Ma'am, you have to leave now.
Watching me. Watching you. It's short. Hard to see. So we wish you a drone-free LA. We wish you a drone-free LA. We wish you a drone-free LA. And no more shootings.
Hamid Khan.
Hello, Hamid Khan with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And it may come across as being funny to you, but it runs very deep for all of us. Hello, I'm speaking to you guys, if you wouldn't mind just turning around and paying some attention to what some community members have to say. What Mariela just caroled out to you was what the community has been saying. I gave these folders, I don't know if you got them or not. This is, again, a copy of the drone report that we had given to you. And while, you keep on saying that the LAPD is not using the drones, but they are in the possession of the Inspector General. They've been sitting at Bustamante's office for about a year and a half. The reason why we are amping this thing up and escalating these demands right now is that given the political moment, given the tragedy in San Bernardino, given what is happening all around the world, this is also the moment, if you're reminded of 9/11, that how fast things move, how the Patriot Act was shoved down our throats within 6 weeks after the events of 9/11, how local law enforcement agencies continue to escalate and become more and more militarized, how extraordinary police powers were expanded, how extrajudicial authority was granted, how NSA expanded its authority, and how NSA, without getting any authority, just this mass data collection. So what we are saying here now is that this is also a time to not only to reflect, but to act as well, and to create a model from Los Angeles that, no, we will not follow that path again. We will not go down that road where our school police forces have rocket launchers and minesweepers. We're not going to go down that road. So the drones signify and symbolize that massive militarization of the Los Angeles Police Department. And what we are asking for you to do is to send them back to the manufacturer. Do what Seattle did. Do what Seattle did, because these came for free from the city of Seattle. And this is exactly so. Read that report. It is built upon about over 200 surveys, several interviews, many focus groups, and people are speaking out. So take action. Take action. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, we're now on item number 2, report of the Chief of Police, Chief Beck.
Mr. President and Commissioners, Chief Beck had to leave for an emergency press conference with the LAUSD. Chief Basinger just got here, is not prepared for the report. Chief Beck asked that you continue his report until he returns.
Okay. So let's move to the consent agenda items. Do we have any comment cards on the consent items?
We have one comment card for 3A and one comment card for 3B.
Okay, call those comments, please.
Okay, we have Mr. Herman, 3A, and Riddell Jones. Oh, no, that's for 3B. I'm sorry. 3A, Mr. Herman.
We're coming back to item 2 when the chief returns.
Mr. B, I'm going to allow you the floor today. The chair is in.
Mr. Chair, the department's report for today's date, December, oh, I'm sorry, but today is the 15th. Relative to donations and napkins and plates, how much can you pay for napkins and plates, Mr. Soberoff? Are you still sore? Are you sore from last week's presentation by Mr. Spindler? Oh, let me stay on topic because I'm just a boy in a mask representing the public's importance on the matters of item 3A to approve the department's report except the donation for December 4th, which has passed, relative donation of maintenance, licensing, cloud storage for 3 body-worn cameras. Oh, Mr. Herman, you were kicked out of a meeting yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Since we're talking about cameras, I was insulted by Krikorian, a councilman, because he claimed that my phone was offensive. So he kicked me out of the meeting where I could not participate in today's public safety meeting as well because Mitch Englander, who's running for county supervisor, the reason why Steve
Sir, you're
Soboff
off
is
topic.
crying.
Can you please get back on the topic of item 3A?
Finish up, Mr. B.
Sorry, Mr. Vice President. I'm speaking on item 3A again because I've been told to. 463,637 from the Los Angeles Police Foundation for the benefit of the Los Angeles Police Department.
Thank you for your comments. Do I have a motion on item 3A? Do I have a second? All in favor?
And the
3B.
The speaker for 3B, we have a card for Riddell Jones.
3B. Well,
3B. I don't have.
Okay, we're calling now item 3B. Who's the speaker?
Riddell Jones. No speaker.
3B.
Prentice Jenkins, City Life Newsletter.
I don't have a
Active
card for
since
you, Mr.
1991.
Jenkins, for 3B.
Yeah, I'm Riddell Jones. I'm speaking for Riddell Jones since they killed her. They murdered her. I decided to speak for her today. Somebody's got to speak for her. And they got to speak for the dead.
So, Mr. Jenkins, item 3B.
Okay, 3B, you're going to spend $463,637 to store 860 body-worn cameras in the cloud. Now, that $463,000 you're getting from the Los Angeles Police Foundation. Why couldn't you just take that $463,000 and finance the proposal that I gave you to create a subcommittee of the Board of Police Commission? Why couldn't you do that? Apparently, if we talk to the Los Angeles Police Foundation, they'll give us this type of money because they keep giving it to you guys for body cameras that the public will not get to see. Now, does the Los Angeles Police Foundation get its money from other police, or does it get it from public tax dollars? That's what we need to know. Because if it gets it from public tax dollars, anytime that you have an issue, a situation with those body cameras, you have to show the public. If you bought those body cameras with any type of tax dollars, you have to reveal that whatever's on those body cameras to the public. You do know that, right? I know you're going to try and get around it. But just like what happened to Laquan McDonald, it took them 18 months, and then they finally came out with the body camera, with the dash cam. Cop said, yeah, he lunged at me. Guess what? He didn't lunge at him. Cop was lying. And guess what? Every cop that's sitting around here laughing about Laquan is going to be like Henry Solis sitting in the county jail, LAPD officer Henry Solis. Because you got to be crazy to laugh when you see a man get gunned down like that and then a cop lie about it. That's on all you.
We have a motion on, do we have any other comments?
No, sir.
Okay, do we have a motion on item 3B? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion moves.
Okay, we're now on item number 4, regular agenda items. We have 3 comment cards on 4A.
Before we get to 4A, do we have any comment cards on 4F or 4J?
No, sir.
Do any of my commissioners,
Approval of item 4F and 4J.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So those 2 items are moved, and let's go back to item 4A.
Okay, we do have comment cards on 2 comment cards on 4B and 1 comment card on 4C. Did you want to pull any other item or?
Yeah, no, I think so. We'll go to item 4A, and we'll have
4A, okay. We'll begin with 4A, verbal presentation and update from the commanding officer and Community Police Advisory Board representative regarding community-initiated problem-solving, crime strategies, and other programs and goals within the Pacific area.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So first, we'd just like to thank you for the opportunity for Mr. Katota and I to tell you a little bit about Pacific. In order to do so, I think it's important to paint a holistic picture of the command for many of you who might not know it intimately. So Pacific roughly is 26 square miles with an estimated population of over 200,000 people, which is fast and growing, particularly with the developments in Playa Vista and Venice Beach. We have a diverse community that includes Delray, Manchester Square, Oakwood, the Palms, and so on. It's home to many of the startup tech companies in Silicon Beach, Yahoo, Snapchat, Google. We have the Clippers headquarters. We house Loyola Marymount University, and of course, as you know, LAX. We also have a Mar Vista Gardens housing development that we deal closely with HACLA on. The uniqueness of Pacific is you'll see on the next slide that our boundaries are very unique, and most of our partnerships are with our outside agencies, Santa Monica, Culver City, Hawthorne, El Segundo. We deal with the county with respect to beaches and harbor, county lifeguards, marina sheriffs, and also our LAWA, our Los Angeles World Airport partners. So the emphasis on building strong relationships is very critical in our command. And as you can see on the next slide, our boundaries are very unique. And what you see in the white areas are all those surrounding agencies I just previously mentioned. Also unique to Pacific is that we have 3 grid zones that we deal with, and what that does is that challenges us with respect to our crime, and you can see the percentages up there. And of most concern to us, and what we'll be focusing in 2016, is the increase in violent crime, and that percentage equates to 176 additional victims of violent crime compared to the year prior. But it is worth mentioning when we talk about the crime picture that if you look at our violent crime analysis, at the end of the first quarter, we were up 51%. However, now at December 12th, last run, we're down 29%. So we do know that the strategies that we're placing, the engagement from our command, the community partnerships, have made an impact in reducing that. So
Were you on homicides this year compared to last year?
10 year to date versus 1 last year.
1 last year?
Yes, sir.
What do you attribute that to?
A variety of things. There's no spree. A couple of them were gang-related and solved. Just a variety of things that can't really put a finger on. So that really speaks to our challenges that we'll be facing going into next year. And a couple things that Pacific is doing very unique to the command is we have a homeless outreach model, which allows us to place those in need. We've placed over 200 people through this model that's outreach coincides with LAPD personnel, and that's above and beyond the rest of the social service providers in the command, including Department of Mental Health and some of the avenues through Laura's Law that we're using. We also have 2 collaboratives, the Venice Partnership and the Mar Vista Collaborative, which is modeled after the Watts Task Force, thanks to Commissioner Hooper. And we're hoping that those collaboratives really focus on building public trust and building relationships within the 26 square miles.
With our remaining time, we're going to focus on 3 topics: youth development, crime prevention, community engagement, some of our special events that we host, and our efforts around emergency preparedness and counterterrorism awareness training.
And just briefly, would like to share our success with the youth programs. I'm sure everyone knows that citywide, that's a huge emphasis for us, and how much we invest in our youth programs and the empowerment programs. Pacific really focuses on the academic component, and we're proud to share that we have 98% of our cadets graduate from high school, and 91% actually go into the collegiate level or military service. Particularly, we have one young lady who just recently received the Rice Award from Adrian Mack in 77th Street for her volunteerism. So that really is an emphasis that we put on in our post as one of the top 5 posts in the city, and we're still working on recruitment.
That's great.
This is a potpourri of some of the programs that we've offered. Recently, Pacific put out a holiday season crime prevention tips, as we know, lots of opportunities for theft. We also had celebrated our 23rd annual Police Appreciation Dinner. Chris Williams, former CPAB member who just passed away this past year, hosted that and led that. We now have a new team in place. We've been able to add 4 to 5 new Community Police Advisory Board members that have given us some new ideas and broader participation. We did lose one of our hardest working members, Monica Harmon, who's gone on to other divisions to spread her wealth and skills to other places. And so she still continues to participate, but on a different level. One of the things of special note, so part of this is things that the community has done, the Officer Appreciation Dinner. A Badge of Heart slide below is an initiative by a Pacific officer when making calls to community members and coming across a needy family. This was a foundation he created so that they can provide food and some basic services to victims of crime and needy families. And so this is an initiative of that.
And just last time we came before the Police Commission, technology was a relatively new implementation. It's now become one of our staples, and that's just a testament to the fact that we're using social media to keep our community informed, but also to capitalize on the benefit it can provide with crime prevention tips.
2 of our larger annual events is our Pacific Winter Wonderland Toy Drive. You'll see Mike Bonin in the upper right-hand corner with a dancing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer hat, and somewhere hidden in there is also the captain with also the same hat. But we've had a variety, tremendous participation, several thousand people go through, community contributions from all a part of Pacific area. Muscle Beach Toy Drive is one of the larger ones. The Chicano Harley Riders participate as well as donations of food and toys by community members from all over. Another part of the outreach is the Pacific LAPD Santa Sleigh stops. Pacific Santa Sleigh is becoming well known throughout the city, and it seems to be doing a city tour. But part of what the community, this is a wonderful outreach that Pacific provides to the senior lead officers, create stops. A number of communities develop Santa stop signs, and the community gathers around those. And it's a wonderful outreach throughout Pacific.
And our national night out, the value in this slide is that we changed the venue this year to Venice High School due to some previous strained relationships there. There's a new principal, the new commanding officer, so we capitalized on that opportunity to really reestablish roots in the local high school, and it proved very effective.
Palms also hosted another event that same evening and had an incredible turnout, partially in response to an incident in a park and kind of reclaiming it for public use and as a celebration of community, really having a wonderful event, free food, and 1,500 people came out to that event where it had been site of a tragic incident. Mar Vista also was, the Venice event had our World Series champion pitcher Tim Leary participate, and Mayor's Crisis Response Team and many others. This is some of the information that CPAB put out recently in response. Part of a Community Police Advisory Board is to be proactive when we can, but we know when things happen that's also an opportunity to educate and to share information in a timely manner. So this is an example of us trying to be timely, talking about how we can prepare in today's day and age of being ready for what happens on a daily basis. On January 16th, we're proud to announce our ribbon cutting of our community center. Last year, we showed you some walls, and now we're hoping to open the doors in the new year.
So we know that was very brief, ladies and gentlemen, but that just is really an overview of the command. But really, I hope it epitomizes the partnership that we have with CPAB and how we're really using them to reach out to the community effectively.
Fantastic. Thank you for the presentation. Any questions? Thank you very much. Do we have any comments from the floor?
We have 5 comment cards. We have Prentice Jenkins, Mr. Herman, Jamie Garcia, Ted Hayes, and Wayne Spindler.
Prentice Jenkins, activist since 1991, City Life newsletter. I want to know, in your initiated problem solving, how do you solve the problem of mentally disturbed police officers? You know you have them in the police department. I know every last cop here has heard one of them say, I want to just nuke that whole goddamn neighborhood. They've all heard it. What are you doing in the Pacific area to address mental instability of first responders in blue? How do you handle that? Because if you don't handle that, Ezell Ford ends up dead. Riddell Jones ends up dead. People end up dead when you don't address the psychological instability of police officers. You people got a lot of stuff in your head. You got blood, guts, children dead. You got heads blown off by shotguns. That's what these people see every day. Guess what? There's no way you can forget that. They say, well, they're trained to handle that. No, they're trained to keep coming back to work. The mind, you can't teach the mind to handle that. And you have to do something about cops and the mental illness that they go through. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a debilitating psychological condition of police officers in this community. And that's why they just start shooting. They start shooting for one reason. It's not about whether that guy's got a gun or not. It's about that bitch trying to take my children and taking most of my money. So he can't kill his wife. So guess who he comes to work and kills? With post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mr. Herman.
Mr. B's going to speak on my behalf because I have a sore throat.
Let me holler out to Venice Beach. Venice Beach, hootie hoo!
All right. Let me come back and speak, Mr. B. I want you to sit there and pay attention to Mr. Soboroff's expressions. Watch him closely, okay? Now, regarding the activity whereabouts in Venice Beach, we've all heard of multiple incidents where the failure of this commission has taken retaliation against African Americans, such as a gentleman who would come in here under the name of the Red Chief. Toot, toot. And so this Red Chief has multiple tickets. Only 71 of them. And yet this commission has placed itself in a position to say that the color of the law is more important than your constituents' rights. Your constituents' rights. The color of my skin hasn't changed, nor the idea of how I see racism at Venice Beach. You attack the homeless. You attack the vendors. You attack Michael Hunt in retaliation. So where does the problem begin? Where does the problem end? It's all about our civil rights, Mr. Inspector General. That you and the FBI investigate the regulation of this commission who bark at us because we come in here exposing waste, fraud, and abuse.
Jamie Garcia, followed by Ted Hayes and Mr. Spindler, Wayne Spindler.
So, Jamie Garcia, Stop LAPD Spying. So, I'm coming up here again to be redundant and kind of now demonstrate the contrast between recognized community members. So, again and again, we see members of legitimized community come up, present, discuss what they think is going on in their community. But we have also come with reports that we want to be recognized. We've had the drone report. We've had reports on suspicious activity.
Ms.
We've had
Garcia, you
report
have
on
to-
body
you have to
cameras.
limit
We've had
your
reports on
comments
surveillance.
to
But
the
I
item.
am. This is related. If you listen, it is related. So I want to talk about what community members are recognized. You allow these community members to present, you ignore us. So again, I'm going to be redundant about this meeting. We want a meeting to talk about the 3 points. We want power for discipline to go back to the commission.
That is
we
not
want,
the
yes, it is.
item.
Matt Johnson, it is.
It
If
is
you
not.
think about what community members you allow to be recognized, and you think about the community members that come here, this is the contrast I'm trying to uplift right now. This is the contrast that you are ignoring. We are asking for a meeting. We're asking for you to
I
answer
understand
the
what you're
email.
asking for. You're off topic. Please, if you want to talk about the item, talk about the item. If you want to talk about your meeting, then you have to wait until public comment.
No, you didn't listen. I'm talking about the contrast of recognized communities. That's the part. Why don't you repeat that part? Because that's what I started with. The contrast between recognized community members. You're ignoring us. You're continually ignoring us. You're hiding behind this glass castle. Answer the email. I want people to hear it. I want people to constantly hear that you are refusing to meet with us. You are refusing. So stand up. Meet with community members. Don't just have selected community members here
You're
to
off
be
topic.
represented.
Please have a seat.
I think that you're not listening.
Please have. I am listening.
No.
Please have a seat.
So then what did I say? What was that last piece that I said?
Have a seat.
See, you don't want to acknowledge it. Yeah, I know. The next step is to kick me out.
Yes, it is.
Ted Hayes.
These presentations never indicate the address of these facilities. I don't know where the Pacific Division is located, and believe me, it's going to take some time to find out what the actual address is. So they never indicate where they are. I was really impressed with the 30% uptick increase in violent crimes. That's amazing, considering everywhere else crime seems to be diminishing within the police department districts. Maybe they might be simply the only ones who are telling the actual truth about crime, and everyone else is padding their books and outright lying. What I might caution the Pacific Division about is your lobby. Every lobby I've been into when I found the address of the division, there was always some problem. I was at 77th Street yesterday. It's absolutely filthy, inside and out. But that's a GSA responsibility. I understand that. But I think the captain can initiate the cleanliness of the division. The other thing you will always find is if you come in and say you wish to file a personnel complaint, they will lie and say, oh, you have to fill out a form, and here's a form over here, and whatever. And you know the first thing you can do is fill it out by simply coming in and talking about it. Because some people are illiterate. They cannot write. And even if they can write, they don't do it well. And you know that when you look at the information provided by officers. So the first thing is the suppression of the ability to file a complaint against an officer is an ongoing, consistent pattern and practice of every police division. I can assure you, I'll be at Pacific, I'll take a look around, and I'll make a report to you as to whether or not I think it's adequate.
Thank you for your
Wayne
comments.
Spindler.
Yes, back again after our nice after discussion item that me and Mr. Soborov had in the lobby last week. I had a lot of time to reflect. And I realized he called me the worst piece of shit he's ever seen. And, well, I have to agree.
I invited you to lunch, too.
Yeah, well, you're in such hot water right now, my friend, that, well, There's people now that understand, and they're going to do something about it because they know
Mr. Spindler.
that you need to leave this commission.
Mr. Spindler, the item is...
That's fine. Well, I'm just letting you know somebody's out of control and you don't care. But when you go down to Venice, can black people file complaints? No, they can't do it. They can't do it. Black people cannot file complaints. Only rich people can file complaints. Black people can't file complaints. So now, when you get your statistics at the end of the year, the complaints are down for African Americans. That's what you call them, African Americans, because they can't file complaints, because there's no black cops there, and because niggas can't write and read, so they not writing and reading and filing complaints. Now, the nice black lady you had on the commission here, she started talking about this. She demanded a report. Why are there so many black men being arrested by Latino officers, and why are they so pissed? She's gone now because we were going to get the answer. But the commission doesn't allow anybody to tell the truth. You got to have 5 liars to perpetuate the lie, like the offer to lunch. The only lunch I got offered was my head up my ass.
We have no other comment cards on this item. We're now on item number 4B, Inspector General's report dated December 15th, 2015, relative to the body-worn video inspection mission area.
Thank you, Commissioners. Seated before you is Assistant Inspector General Kevin Rogan, who was the principal investigating party in my office for this audit, and he'll be presenting the report today.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the Commission. The Department first deployed its body-worn video in the mission area beginning in August 31st of this year. And as a result, the Office of Inspector General conducted its first inspection of body-worn video camera during the 90-day transition period. During that period, we examined the 1 categorical use of force which occurred. We examined a 3-day period for all Code 3 responses, arrests, and in-custody transports. And we took 1 day at random to view 3 hours of video, simply at random, to see what we could find. Based on our inspection of the video, we formed the opinion that the belt-worn video provided footage that was of less usefulness than the chest-worn video. Secondly, we noted that in attempting to recover the video footage from the department's software website, that the absence of the incident number to track to the incident makes it very difficult to identify specific cases, and we think that may be an issue for both case filing and for later reviews, especially by division. And thirdly, we noted that in doing the Code 3 responses and the in-custody reviews, that the video, particularly the belt-worn, we think is of minimal value to the department in its assessment of what the officers are doing, because even for the chest-worn, it's either depicting up into the sky or it's depicting the dashboard of the car, but we didn't find a tremendous amount of value to the video itself. Inspector General Bustamante and I are both available to answer any specific questions you may have regarding the inspection.
Thank you. I have a concern about the placement of the cameras, not just when officers are in the car, but in the field as well. So I'd like the department and the Inspector General to come back in 90 days and give us a report back on the quality of the footage based on where it's placed on the officer's uniforms. Particularly, I'm interested in the belt versus higher up.
Dan can probably comment on some of it now because it's something we've been talking about for a while. Do you want to hear? Because he's out there actively on it.
Sir, R.F. Ali Khan, Director of Constitutional Policing Policy, and Sergeant Dan Gomez, Officer in charge of the Tactical Technology Section. Sergeant Gomez can mention what the future is, in the near future is on the deployment. I just want to mention with respect to the policy, which requires it to be outside the uniform front-facing. That was done after considerable thought and preparation, and also was included in the testing that Sergeant Gomez had done with the 50 officers who had the cameras deployed in Central Division, and dealing with the practical limitations of what type of attachments we have for the current cameras, which include being able to put it in if you don't have your Class A uniform in the tie, as Sergeant Gomez has here, the open collar long sleeves, and also the clip that's available for the belt, or putting it in the pocket. And as Sergeant Gomez can explain, we don't recommend putting it in the pocket on the chest because of it not being that secure during a pursuit or a fight. And if you're wearing your tie, really the only option is to put on the belt. But I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you. So we did look at all the variety of options. We looked at it in different use case scenarios, both from a tactical perspective. Body type also had a lot to do with it, whether you were a large person, small person, male, female, depending on the type of vest and your chest size. All these things were factors. And we realized very quickly, as we've been very upfront with the Commission, is that there isn't a perfect system. There's a lot of options that we have to take a look at, and it really depends on the particular individual and their body type. Like, for instance, I don't get to say this very often, but I am the perfect size when sitting in a police car. The belt goes actually directly across my chest and actually covers the camera while I'm sitting in the police car. So although I have a great vantage point from the camera being on my chest, from the car or when I'm initially getting out, I'm actually covering the camera, again, being that perfect size. But we realized that, and as a result of our testing, we looked at a variety of reasons having that option to place it in different spots. From a use of force perspective, where you place your hands when you use the microphone to use the radio, all these then become detrimental to the placement on the chest, but are very advantageous to on the belt. Conversely, depending on your size and your proximity to a person, on the belt, even though it has a 130-degree angle, the closer you are to the person, the more you cut off their head. You tend to get the chest and the hands. Also still valuable information. But in either case, you combine the video with the audio, and then we feel you have a good representative sample of what's happening. You take of the additional video of the officers on scene and look at that as a totality of the investigation, as well as witness statements, officer statements, and all the physical evidence, I think give you a good perception of what actually occurred, and that totality is, I think, what we were trying to achieve with these multiple placements. Now, since we've been working with TASER, we've had a lot of discussions about advancements of the technology. There's a new camera coming out, which actually I have with me today. And this new camera gives you some additional advantage. It has a magnet mount instead of the traditional mount, and it allows you to place it under your uniform and then snap it onto different parts of your uniform. So again, part of the issue that we're having around placement, this will partly be solved. Where it really comes into advantage is on your, now that we're getting cold, and it is very cold outside, is jackets. The jackets tend to be thicker, and then the officers want to zip them up. So again, having this option to be able to wear it on the outer garment of your jacket also will help with the overall placement. But even in this case, it's not a perfect system. It will allow for a greater variance in where you put it. But still, I think the Commission should continue to understand that it is not going to be a perfect system, but we certainly are striving to make it as best as possible.
And one other point is when these are developed, deployed, which will include every officer by the time the deployment is done, about mid-year next year, including all those who currently have them, this cannot be worn on the belt. So the variation.
It can't be worn on the belt, but it could still be worn very low on the body. And the officers have right now have full discretion to wear it anywhere above the belt. Am I right about that?
Under the current uniform committee policy, that is true.
Yeah. So that's why I want to do I'd like to have this report in 90 days to see how the footage looks and see if we want to revisit that.
Yes, and as you know, we have about 100,000 recordings now in 5 different divisions. We'll have more by then, and we can do a more representative sample and look at a variety of incidents to make an informed recommendation.
Terrific. There's also I think there's a category of activation that we just need to close a little bit of a loophole. It's mandatory when officers are going code 3 that both the in-car video and the body cameras are activated. But there are times where an officer would otherwise be going code 3, but for tactical reasons or other reasons they don't go to code 3. In those situations, it needs to be mandatory that the officers also activate the cameras.
Correct.
That's not, and this has come up in other contexts.
Sure.
So I want to make sure that that is written into the policy.
Sure.
So we close that loophole.
Just to identify, there are two different contexts of that where we've had incidents in digital in-car video where a unit has been traveling code 3, but oftentimes will turn off their lights and siren as they get closer to the incident, and the video may or may not be activated. I believe, and unfortunately Chief Villegas couldn't be here because of ongoing events today, I believe there was a notice that already went out on that issue that it should remain activated even if full lights and siren are not activated. The digital in-car video, as all of you know, it's sort of a mindless thing in the sense that once you activate, the light bar turns on. You don't have to consciously turn it on.
Right.
On the body-worn, that should generally be happening if the call is likely to be an enforcement or investigative contact. When we review the video, we'll make sure that's the case. And also, I know one of the issues that Mr. Rogan had identified is the value of having the video on the body-worn when responding to a call, because depending on your stature, it could be a nice view of the dashboard or the ceiling, etc., and the value of that. As Sergeant Gomez can also speak to, we have that in the policy that should be activated before getting there, even if it does record that, simply because we don't want the officers to have to think about putting it on once they get to the situation. But your report is well taken, and as part of our review, we'll make sure to look at that.
Okay, great.
Excuse me, I have two questions as well. One, for the department, in the materials, the Inspector General states right on the front page that there's a 90-day transition period during which the unintentional policy violations are to be considered as non-disciplinary training issues. And I'm just curious if that 90-day transition period is something that's been used in the past with other equipment or other policies, or is that something new simply for the body cameras?
I'm not. Do you know in the digital in-car? I think there. I wasn't here, and unfortunately, Chief Villegas isn't here to comment on that. I think we've always had some sort of transition period for various equipment. I don't know precisely what it was on the digital in-car video, but we do expect for a limited period of time that there is going to be a period where we would not initiate personnel investigations if it was an unintentional violation.
And that would be true, for example, for the new tasers that are being rolled out, and if when there's a change in the weapons that officers.
Well, I would need to come back to you, Commissioner. I don't know what has officially been done in those capacities.
Appreciate that, because if this is similar to what the department's done in the past, I'd like to just understand that. If it isn't, I'd like to understand what's different about it. And second, and I guess this is a question for the Inspector General, when we approved the rollout of the on-body cameras, we also approved various policies related to them, and some of those substantive policies we have some disagreement about. And I know my expectation is that you'll be reporting back to us at some point relatively soon on the experience that the officers are having, to give us the opportunity then to review those policies to see whether we think we did in fact adopt the best policies or we ought to change them. And I'm just curious, given where we are now with this first report, if you have a sense of the timing of when we're likely to have enough information to be able to review those policies as well.
Well, as the Commission knows, because of the rollout and the limited rollout to different divisions, the sample size has been quite limited to make some of this analysis, but we're expecting that we'll be taking the information and comparing it to complaints and uses of force, high-speed pursuits, any of the high-risk areas, and then doing a random sample to see if we can kind of diagnose any shortcomings in the policy. And as we do that, we will be bringing regular audits to the Commission for review. I know that Kevin Rogan and I have sat down and come up with a plan to look at this issue in a variety of contexts so that we can really test the policy and see if there are issues or concerns or things that need to be tightened up. I can get you the plan. I can submit the plan to you on what we expect to audit and how we expect to do that.
I would appreciate that, and I think since when we adopted the policies, and several other large cities have adopted Some have adopted similar policies. Some have adopted very different policies. And I look forward to hearing from the department and the Inspector General sooner rather than later on our experience and the experience that we can glean from the other cities as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just from an operational perspective, the 860 are out and deployed. Some of them have been deployed over 90 days, and others. What's the word from the officers? The officers that were gung-ho at the beginning, and the officers that were totally on the other side of the fence from the beginning.
Yeah, I can tell you that we go back to the stations to make sure that things are still moving along, and the general feedback that we get is, this isn't as bad as I thought. It's actually easier than I thought, because we've made, I think, through our process and the vetting process that we did, an easy selection for the officers without a lot of things to do. We've made it fairly simple. The addition of the Connected Officer Program with the phone on them to be able to add data while they're in the field so they don't have to do it at end of shift, I think are all positive signs of adoption for the organization. And even the Inspector General's report, I think, is showing that the officers are in fact activating. They are embracing it. But like anything, it just takes a little bit to get used to. And I think that's what we're seeing. But overall, I think the feelings are good. Those officers that were most apprehensive, once they understand that what the system limitations are, what it doesn't do, for instance, me activating it remotely to be able to see what's happening, I think the comfort level goes quite high. And the fact that they can just drop it into the cradle at end of watch, come pick it up with a fully charged, ready-to-go device. Again, that simplicity of the operations helps, and we stress that they were the same officer they were before they put on that camera. They're the same officer after they put on that camera. This is another tool for them to embrace, and I think once that message has been part of what has been going out to the divisions, the command has been very supportive. So with all that, I think we're seeing a high rate of adoption.
De-escalation, drop in officer-related complaints. I know we're going to be tracking those, but just the initial reactions?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing anecdotally, I get a lot of stories from the officers, mainly around de-escalation. I mean, we get a lot of stories about them showing up at a scene, telling people that they have the camera on. We had a particular incident with domestic violence where actually the person being detained was actually rather cooperative. It was all the people around them that were escalating the scenario. So the officers decided to tell everybody that they were in fact being recorded, and that de-escalated the entire situation. And, you know, I don't know, but it could have stopped a use of force from occurring. I mean, there's a variety of things that could have come out of that, but the bottom line is that it was able to de-escalate. And the biggest thing I hear is from supervisors is that as they're asked to respond to scenes where they're having a difficult situation, the supervisors are using that to their advantage and notifying the public that, in fact, the officers were recording, they're recording, and want to know how they can resolve the situation. And in those particular scenarios, we're seeing a de-escalation in the event, which I think is a very positive forecast for what's going to happen once we go citywide.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have any comment cards on this matter?
Yes, sir. We have 7 comment cards. The first card submitted was for Charlie Africa. Is somebody speaking on? And then Jamie Garcia, Hamid Khan, Wayne Spindler, Mr. Herman, Ted Hayes, and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Prentice Jenkins, activist since 1991. Publisher of City Life newsletter. I thought I'd speak for Charlie Africa since he's dead. He's in the ground. He's worm food now. Murdered by the LAPD. Now, do you have a number on all of the cameras that were tampered with by police? Like 80 of those cameras on the cars, on the dash cam cars were tampered by police. Not one cop was disciplined or anything for it. So I want to know if this panel has a number of video cameras that were tampered by cops. Is there anyone that could give me that number? And President Johnson, I wanted to know if you would give me permission to plug my receiver up for my speakers back there. There's a plug back there. They won't let me plug my speakers up, so I can't. Mr. Tud Hayes said I need to make sure this is louder. So I bought speakers. It's going to be real loud now. He could hear it. So can I get permission to plug it up back there?
No, sir.
Yes?
Sorry, no speakers.
Okay, no speakers. Wow. Okay, no speakers. So, so are there any incidents where officers actually tampered with the body cameras? Yes or no? Where can I get that answer? Anyone on the board or these officers, can they tell me if anyone's tampered with the?
Our Inspector General will be certainly looking at that issue should it arise.
Thank you. See, I keep a lot of knowledge up here. I keep a lot of space up here for knowledge. Thank you.
Jamie Garcia, followed by Hamid Khan.
Jamie Garcia, Stop LAPD Spying. So we also have come, the community has come with reports on body cameras. And again, there's been no response to what we think about these body cameras. So in regards to the placement of the body camera, I think it should be pretty obvious that it needs to not be at the belt, that it needs to be much higher to even get an idea of what's going on, even if I were to think that body cameras were any kind of solution when we think about police violence. So when I'm thinking about the discharge of a fire weapon after, and the camera not being turned on. So it reminds me, and I'm really happy to hear community members starting to talk about incidences that this commission is not addressing. So we think about the sabotaging of the digital in-car video systems. So it makes me think, okay, here we're back to police officers not turning on these body cameras. What is going to be the disciplinary action of that? And if I have to base it on history, I'm going to see that there's going to be no disciplinary action. In fact, when we find out that, 90 of 300 are sabotaged, possibly, there's going to be no disciplinary action. It's going to be like, well, there's too many officers. Well, we didn't keep appropriate logs. Well, we don't really care that this was during the violation, during the consent decree when it was actually in place. So it's hard for me to believe that even after all these reports are generated, that anything's going to actually come from it. So, the other point is I still don't hear people talking about where this data is going to go. We know it's being stored in evidence.com, but how is it going to be shared? We know the information sharing environment exists. We know that data is being collected through suspicious activity reporting, through automatic license plate readers, through Trapwire. But again, it's not being addressed. What's going to happen with this data? Who else is it going to be shared with, and what's the intention of the data? And what's also funny is that now City Council is saying, oh my goodness, look at how much this is going to cost. We didn't realize that. We need to discuss this more. Can the city really afford it? There's a homeless crisis. There's people that are not going to be secured during this massive storm that's coming, people who are not secured in general, and still we're going to waste our money on a useless reform. And there's no really need to cut off this microphone. My voice is really, really loud.
Hamid Khan.
Hamid Khan with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I'm kind of reminded, going back to the mid-2000s with all the pomp and show about the digital in-car video camera. It's the same players who are sitting over here. I mean, you guys are just new, who get recycled within the system to rubber stamp all these programs on these policies. I mean, it's interesting that last year, or 2013, when body cameras were first came on the table by Soboroff, in September, Soboroff had found out about the sabotaging of the in-car video cameras and how 90 out of 300 were sabotaged. And by December, he was pushing it, and with all his friends in Hollywood. But now we are looking to see that how we speak about mission creep. And this is a clear example of internal mission creep, that how it was stated about $26 million. Now the price tag is going to $56 million. Now we need an additional 112 more staffing, and it's going to be this, there's going to be more structure. But yet at the same time, some of the basics are still not addressed. Some of the basics that some people on this panel, your comrades, have brought up about the pre-review of the footage. That is still off the table. That let's give the cops full authority to pre-review the footage. People, your colleagues, have voted against that and have been demanding. Salzburg has been talking about it, but that gets completely sidelined. Yet at the same time, what we are seeing is this progression of the same old smokescreen that is being thrown out at us, where it's going to cost us more money. The issue of the second thing about background footage, where the chief has stated that all background footage can be used for evidence as well. So at what point? I mean, and we keep on bringing this to you because these questions are not being asked because these folks are paid to just completely garnish all these things. So you got to do that. Something has to change because, you know, all this legacy that you're trying to build, Matt Johnson, is going to be useless. And you're going to be held responsible for that because Soboroff and all are useless.
Wayne Spindler, followed by Mr. Herman, Ted Hayes, and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Got to connect the dots. Wednesday, November 18th, 2015, B3 section of the LA Times. Panel okays $31 million body camera contract. I quote, the LAPD already distributed 860 cameras this fall, purchased through private funds raised by Police Commissioner Steve Soboroff. Now, today's agenda tells us more. The cameras for the 860 body cameras on 3B came from the Los Angeles Police Foundation. Well, then we must logically conclude, because I took this in college, Steve Soboroff owns and controls the Los Angeles Police Foundation, because those are the same 860 body cameras. But see, the LA Times lies. They're covering up. And that's why the media in the back there run. As soon as I walk in this room, they run back to their little Jeeps and their little cars outside. Quick! The truth! Run! And that's what they do. They run out. See, Steve Soboroff raised the money, but here, Matt Johnson says the Los Angeles Police Foundation raised the money. So now we know Steve Soboroff is the man behind the mysterious Los Angeles Police Foundation. All those campaign donations and all those PACs and all of that donations on the schedules, millions of dollars being funneled through the back door. So when he gives a terrorist threat outside last week, that's why 15 police officers put their hands in their pockets, because you can't get rid of the banker. The banker owns this building. Steve, you own the Los Angeles Police Foundation, and you own the LAPD, and you own every single Uncle Tom that exists in this department. Congratulations.
Let's take a moment of prayer. As a local government, it is said to have an unconstitutional policy when it comes to its failure to train, assist, and provide adequate equipment, such as Steve Soboroff and his crony team. It reflects on employees, their failure to train. It amounts to a deliberate indifference from what is the obvious truth, what is the realistic fact, and what the hell you're hiding. What do you have to hide from the public? No one wants to answer that. But the public knows. Every person that comes here and speaks knows for a fact there is some whitewashing going on, a manipulation of paperwork that says that the report reflects $31 million spent very well with federal and state dollars. But I think the FBI and the Department of Justice should investigate how their fucking dollar is spent for cameras that will protect civilian lives. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. If it didn't, you would say I'm wrong. In fact, I am politically correct. When you oust me out of meetings with Sergeant of Arms using excessive force to push me out a door for simply picking up a camera and saying, fuck you, England, for county supervisor, am I politically incorrect? It's on camera. So, Steve Soboroff, I cannot say no more than you need to record your failures to the public so that well-trained officers will use the cameras to protect the public's interest, not political gain, not political cronyism. The result, employees making significant wrong decisions and taking lives that matter. Thank you.
Ted Hayes.
Morning.
So far has not been body cameras, but of course the cameras that people standing by took camera video from inside a 7-Eleven or a hotel or anything else. So the question we need to know, and there should be some discussion on that, is how does the LAPD obtain bystander camera information? Do they confiscate it? Do they get a court warrant for evidence in commission of a crime or an incident? How do they obtain that? Can they actually obtain it? Once they do they copy it and return it to the owner, or what? That's what's important. Because we've seen officers smash cameras that bystanders were taking pictures with. I know with Latasha Harlan's killing, it was videoed, and we saw that, but we don't know how the DA managed to obtain that video. So, since most of the information we've gathered so far is from things other than body cameras, McDonald wasn't talking about information on the Sheriff Warren body camera yesterday. It was from outsider who provided that information. Not only that, when outsiders have videos, that's valuable information. Many media agencies would pay good money to get that information. So if the police department confiscates your video, your tape, whatever, from your store, whatever, they're taking money from you, actually, because it's only valuable when it's a hot topic. So what we need to know is what is the interaction between the police department and known video information that they don't have in their possession. Can they confiscate it? Can they intimidate the owner? Can they coerce the owner to surrender it? What is the relationship with outstanding videos not in the custody of the police department?
Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Good morning. Thank you for an opportunity to address the Commissioner's
Good morning.
most important issue. What I think with regard to the bias policing, which we have continually exposed and have continually been denied, the real justice that we're seeking, the issue here is first of all, are you fabricating? Are you falsifying? Are you hiding? Are you editing? Which of course is the bone of our contention. You've been exposed in your, I don't know if it's criminal intent in the genocide of black people, poor people, people you put in the trash, people that you consider to be a threat, undesirable, that you want for organ donors for Israel, or to whatever purpose you have deemed our populace. Again, I have been falsely accused in videos that you people consider offensive because of my mouth, because of my skin color, what you think is hot, what you want to use, the way you white people have used black people for over 400 years, okay? So why is it that you think that we are going to believe that your videos have not been edited in the incrimination process of the victims of the continual perpetuation of or crimes committed against our people? Well, you think we're just going to accept that the videos have not been edited? I mean, because, again, your test, not just your testimony, but the history of the lack of servitude, in all honesty, in serving and in policing, in peace. I see there are very few real peace officers that really feel or reach that standard. So I question, of course, the validity or just how real or just how honestly these videos have captured the real series of events in these incidents, as I'm sure most of us here do. I mean, why don't we have an oversight committee so that we can have some justice and some maintenance of real reporting with videos in all aspects of your policing or lack thereof?
And we have no other comment cards on this item, sir.
Do I have a motion to approve?
President, I move approval of item 4B with the added instruction to the chief to report back in 90 days on the issues that Commission President Johnson and I raised.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
That's a report back from the IG and the department
That's right.
concurrently.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now on item.
Thank you.
Item number 4C, Inspector General's report dated December 15, 2015, relative to the review of the bias policing complaints.
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, in front of you is Assistant Inspector General Kevin Rogan.
Good morning.
Good morning again. At the Commission's direction, the Office of Inspector General, reviewed all biased policing complaints that were closed during calendar 2014. For 137 of the complaints, we found that the investigations were generally thorough and complete. We identified several issues, two of the issues of which have already been addressed by Internal Affairs prior to the publishing of the report, which included that the Department will no longer use written interrogatories in place of in-person interviews on bias policing questions, and they will no longer require that a copy of the bias policing protocols be included with the investigation package. The protocols are available on the IAG website. Are available for all investigating officers on the Department's website. Similarly, we found that the adjudications of the reports generally properly relied on the evidence gathered in the investigations. We did note that in 3 cases, the adjudicators referred to the passage of time between the date the incident occurred and the date the complaint was made, and that this was used by the adjudicator as a partial basis to unfound the complaint. As a result of this, the Inspector General recommends that the Department develop guidelines regarding complaint timeliness if time is to be used in the adjudications. Finally, we noted that for bias policing adjudications, there were no sustained complaints in 2014, 2013, or 2012, and we therefore provided for you a chart showing the sustained rate for the 31 categories of complaints as tracked by the Department in its quarterly discipline report. Those are near the end of the report, I think, Section 4. Inspector General Bustamante and I are available for any questions that you may have regarding this report.
Thank you. Commissioner Kim?
Commander Maislin, hi.
Good morning.
So there's been an opportunity for the department to communicate with the IG's office about these findings.
Yes.
And what was the department's response regarding the 7 of the 137 cases that where there was a challenges in the investigation process?
Are you talking about the missing checklist?
The time lapse. So the time lapse was one issue, but there were a couple of other issues that were found.
Well, we agree with the Inspector General from the standpoint that regarding the time lapse itself, that should never be the sole reason for adjudicating a complaint one way or the other. Well, certainly not to unfound a complaint. Time lapse by itself does not detract from the credibility of a complainant, I would say, in probably 99.9% of the times. But when it's used in conjunction with other factors, it may be appropriate to use that factor and that issue. So we will, as we are in the process of amending a document that exists called the I can't remember the name of the document right now, but it's a guide, management guide to discipline, that was first published back in Chief Park's era, so it goes back some ways and hasn't really been updated in quite a number of years. We're in the process of updating that now, and we'll include that issue in the revised management guide to discipline, as well as address that issue with the command staff in training that we provide to the command staff on a whole host of internal affairs matters, as well as to command development and other schools we provide, and quarterly updates we provide to all complaint coordinators on the department. So we will address that internally.
The Inspector General's report identifies a couple of other issues among that 5% of the 137 cases that were the investigation, aspects of the investigation were problematic. The other issues that were identified, I think from my perspective, seem to have to do with the level of discretion that the officer has in evaluating the credibility of complaints. So on page 3 in the bullet point, in the third bullet point, in 2 cases, adjudicators used questionable characterizations of the complainant. One adjudicator referred to complainant's self-created claim and predisposition to shift the blame. And my question has to do with the guidelines in the investigation process. How do we minimize that kind of discretion from coloring the investigation process in the future.
Okay, first off, in those two cases, one of those cases, the adjudicator was merely reiterating or repeating the complainant's categorization of themselves.
Okay.
So it wasn't the adjudicator doing it.
Okay.
But you know, when we train on adjudicating complaints, and going back to the consent decree clearly called for adjudicators to attempt to determine the credibility of all parties, including officers, and that officers should not be favored over complainants. And it's a constant training effort with the command staff, with lieutenants, and with sergeants. That sometimes commanding officers will delegate the responsibility to adjudicate complaints. So it's a constant effort to provide training as to what is appropriate. And then, of course, on the back end, the quality control aspect, internal affairs, I have a review and evaluation section, and they are quality control, and we review every complaint, and we review the adjudications to make sure the adjudications of every complaint is proper. And we routinely send back correspondence back to commanding officers, and we usually send it to the Bureau if we determine that, or we believe that at the division level, the captain erred in adjudicating or did things like this, like that's cited in this report, an inappropriate characterization perhaps, or some relatively minor issue, using time lapse as giving it greater weight than they should have. So we will routinely send back correspondence to train the commanding officers as to what is proper. So it's an ongoing effort and continual effort.
In previous bias policing reports from the department, we've had discussion about the absence of sting complaints, and my understanding, just from my experience with other discrimination claims in the legal realm, is that complaints like this are difficult to prove. And my understanding from previous bias policing reports from the department is that the absence of sustained complaints often had to do with insufficient evidence or other or things like the complainant not pursuing the complaint, those kinds of things. I understand that might be a major reason for an absence of sustained complaints. In previous discussions, however, I highlighted that the persistence of complaints, the initiation of complaints themselves, is something that we should continue to look at as a reflection of continued racial tension between officers and the community, and that in and of itself is an indication that we need to continue to work on improving that relationship. I would like to, in the future, maybe think creatively about how we can improve those relationships among communities of color and officers, because I think that we'll continue to see a general absence of sustained complaints just because of the insufficiency of evidence and the sort of he said, she said, the reality of the investigation process, the reality of cases like this. That's my comment.
And that is a high priority of the department. As you know, the department engaged in relationship-based policing, or the perception issue in the training. We provided the entire department back in August and September of this year. I mean, that's all part of trying to train our people to embrace the community and build relationships between the department and all the different communities in the city of Los Angeles, and the very diverse city of Los Angeles. And you might even think that as we build a better relationship, you might even see the number of bias policing complaints increase, because quite frankly, there are probably a lot of people that perceive, because bias is a perception, that believe that we engage in bias policing, yet maybe don't trust the department to investigate it adequately, and part of the reason may be because there are very few. And there was one complaint where there were sustained allegations, and I think I reported on that with the last quarter. I'll get back to that in a second. But, if their perception is, if one of distrust with the community, perhaps when we build better relationships with the community, those, they'll then, believe that we will look at things better, and perhaps the initial number of complaints will increase. And regarding the one complaint I did mention, back in 2013, we did sustain 2 allegations of bias policing against an officer. And that officer was directed to a Board of Rights to be terminated by the department, and that was the direction, the desire of the Chief of Police. The Board of Rights, which the chief has no ability to overturn their decision. Of course, he can lower a penalty, but cannot increase it or cannot overturn a count from guilty to not guilty. That Board of Rights panel found the accused officer, not guilty of the 2 bias policing counts, but guilty of a 3rd charge for which they did terminate him, and that termination was just recently upheld by the court. So, there was a case where a bias policing complaint was sustained, and of course it was sustained because there was other evidence besides perceptions to, in our estimation, prove that the officer engaged in bias.
My expectation is that with a full rollout of the body cameras, 7,000 units, that there will be some additional pieces of evidence in these kinds of things, because these are very difficult to prove. They are he said, she said, and I think that
they are.
That will be an additional piece of evidence.
We hope so.
Would you agree?
And that's why, when we talk about the increase in the numbers of personnel, I mean, we have body cameras now, and when we investigate on the complaint side, that means we have a new task at hand, because we have a lot of hours of video to look at when we're investigating a complaint. So that takes longer. That takes more people. So, it is a difficult situation, and it does cost people.
I do want to commend the department on the mediation program in particular. I think that's an improvement in the right direction, particularly when we are trying to improve relationships between individual civilians and officers.
Piggybacking on that, because it is very successful. Both the community members seem to respond very positively, the officers respond positively, but the rate at which it's being utilized is tiny.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do we encourage both the public and the officers to engage more in that process?
Well, we do everything we can with the public. I mean, I have a coordinator that spends many hours in salesmanship and trying to convince community members to participate. Recognizing, though, it is a challenge. It is a drain on their lives to have to come downtown or wherever we set it up. It's not always downtown. I mean, we did set it up so we can do mediations in their community, but it takes time away from their lives, and it's an investment. So, we're constantly trying to sell them on it because we see the value in it. So, we do need to do more outreach, and we're going to continue to do more outreach, but at the same time, we have an issue internally on the department in selling it to officers. And
have any efforts been made with the PPL to get them behind it?
Oh, they were behind it from the get-go, and they do support it. They have supported it. We've had presentations at their delegates conference. That's why my coordinator will go out to roll calls and training days everywhere as well, and with the assistance of the Protective League. But, officers are a little skeptical sometimes, and officers look at the statistics as well, and some of the feedback that we've had recently is that some officers, well, they'd rather get an unfounded complaint than have a mediated complaint on their team's report on their disciplinary history, because they think an unfounded complaint, because first off, they believe they did nothing wrong, and they believe an unfounded complaint will be easier than having to explain mediated, because mediated to them means that it just went away, but it wasn't disproven. So to some officers, there's still a kind of a cloud over their head regarding that disposition when they think daters as well. But that officer, nevertheless, still viewed it as a positive experience, having the opportunity to sit down with a community member, and when it came to filling out that survey, is willing to recommend it to others, and is willing to assist in that endeavor for us. So those are the kinds of people we're trying to latch on to help sell the program to their peers. If they hear it from me, they're not likely to believe it. Right. I'm the bad guy in internal affairs, so they need to hear it from their peers.
Sure.
Thank you. I do have a few questions. First, I agree with the comments about the mediation program, and in particular, the need to figure out a way to have it be used more, and so I appreciate that. Following up a little bit on Commissioner Kim's comments, one of the other problems that the Inspector General identified in the adjudications was when there are more than one person involved in an incident, but only one person filed a complaint, that the adjudicator would sometimes use that as one reason to unfound the complaint.
And that's absolutely incorrect. No, that is absolutely not proper to do that. And we would provide training back to them on that. Now, when we review those, we don't just take their adjudication of it and say, okay, well, they said it was unfounded. We'll provide training back to them and just take their recommended adjudication without looking at it ourselves. So in that kind of case, I may look at it and say, well, I believe it was unfounded and there was sufficient other justification for unfounding it, but the fact that they commented on that particular issue, that's inappropriate, and we'll send something back to them to provide training in that, and because that's not right.
And the timing, so the training on that issue and the other issues that Commissioner Kim mentioned, that's something that's ongoing, that you go back to?
Oh, it's ongoing because we provide quarterly training to our complaint coordinators. Chief McCarthy and I have been going out to all the 4 geographic bureaus, and we've been providing that to the command staff and all of the geographic bureaus, and we're taking it to the rest of the department as well. We provide it in command development. We provide it in all of the different training arenas that we have at our disposal, and continue to do that. And this is what came up in this report, and I'm sure in the next report there'll probably be a few other things that surface, and we'll correct those as well.
I guess I appreciate that. I guess I am confused, and you can correct me about my recollection, but my recollection is that a number of years ago, the Commission strongly urged the Department to handle bias policing complaints in a different way. And the Department, I believe it was 2010, responded positively to that. Implemented a number of changes, including the protocols we've talked about, the special unit, and after some experience with that, moved some things from internal affairs out to the bureaus. And we've heard before what you just said, which is that when there are problems, you routinely return these back to where they originated. So I guess given that, I'm just trying to understand then how we get here. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we haven't stopped doing any of the things that you mentioned. We still have the bias policing protocols that we ensure are scrupulously followed. We just amended them recently when we had the opportunity to do so because of the change in the definition of bias policing, which the Commission approved several months ago. We also amended the protocol to require more analysis when the complaint is based on a traffic stop. We now require that they conduct an audit of the officer's citations. It wasn't required before, so we added that to the protocol because we believe that that's the kind of statistical information which is important, and that helps the adjudicator decide, whether or not to sustain or potentially unfound a complaint. So that's important information, and we continue to do that. All of the bias policing complaints continue to be investigated strictly by internal affairs. There have been a few that have fallen through the cracks when the complaint at intake had no mention at all of bias policing. Say it was a routine discourtesy, and that goes out to the area for investigation, and then during the interview with the complainant, they raise a bias policing allegation when they're already in the middle of it. Sometimes they go ahead and complete it as opposed to contacting us and saying, hey, this is bias policing now, we want to give it back to you. So, we scrutinize those very closely, and when they come in, if we have to, we'll reinvestigate it. We'll look at those and say, wait a minute, they missed the mark, and then we'll go and fix it if they took it upon themselves to complete it. So we still do the bias policing complaints in internal affairs. We scrupulously follow the protocols, and occasionally, we're not perfect, so occasionally there'll be errors, and there are sometimes errors in adjudication. And when we find something that's an error, even if it was adjudicated correctly on a case-by-case basis, every single time we find something, we send it back to the command to inform them of what they did that was less than perfect.
So the issues that the Inspector General identified for those cases in this small sample where there were problems with the adjudication, those are ones that you caught in the process, or those are ones that were not caught until the Inspector General found them?
I'm really not sure. I think
Inspector General's report.
I think some we caught, and perhaps some we didn't.
Because for me, that's one of the primary concerns, is that the department has implemented a series of changed policies and practices with respect to bias policing. But at the end of the day, it seems to me there are cases where this multi-level review process has not identified some problems. And at the end of the day, over those 3 years, there were 1,356 allegations of bias policing. Mm-hmm. That means on 1,356 occasions, someone took the time, made the effort to file the complaint. And as you've suggested, there are reasons why people may not want to do that or don't have the time or ability to do that. And in 0 of those times did the department sustain the complaint. And clearly, the vast majority of our officers police constitutionally. But I think it strains credibility for anyone who looks at this to think that in 1,356 allegations that there's not one case.
Well, I think I just told you there were two allegations that were sustained, but they're recorded not as sustained. They're recorded as not guilty, based upon the disciplinary system that exists in the city of Los Angeles.
I'm looking at the report. Mm-hmm. The report says 1,356 allegations and 0 founded. And whether it's 0 or 1 or 2, it seems to me the point is the same. It strains credibility that the system that we've designed is working effectively. And so that's quite disappointing to me. I know would be to the former commission members who pushed so hard to have this put into place. And so I encourage you to look at it again and see whether you can figure out what's going on and whether there's some.
One thing I would like to do is actually create a subcommittee of the commission on this matter. And I suggest that you and I sit on that committee.
Great. I appreciate
that.
that.
What we'd like to do is get a deep dive briefing of the whole investigatory process and maybe work with the department and the inspector general to see if we can come up with any suggestions on improving it. Because
I agree.
I don't think anybody thinks that there were, whether it was 2 or 0, that the number we have here is 0, that there's no issue. Because that's a lot of complaints, and so we need to take a look at it. I am hopeful, as Commissioner Kim and Commissioner Soboroff mentioned earlier, that the institution of body cameras will do 2 things. One, it will improve the behavior of everyone, and that will reduce the number of complaints that we see, but it will also add additional information and additional perspective to be looked at in analyzing these complaints. So hopefully, as the cameras get rolled out, we'll see a noticeable difference in that. One of the things I know I've spoken with the Inspector General about is once we have enough information of doing a comparison of before and after in divisions, so we can have some consistency, and we can also look at across different divisions as well. One thing that struck me in looking at these, because it's not just whether it's bias policing or unlawful search or unlawful detention, where we had a lot of complaints almost 5,000 allegation, yet 3 sustained. But then you look at gender bias, and there were only 30 complaints, but 29 complaints, but 15 were sustained. And it was surprising to me because I would think that the same issues regarding information in a bias complaint you would see in a gender bias complaint. And I was surprised that the number of sustained complaints was so high. Do you have any thoughts? Is the process any different? What would you attribute that difference to?
Well, gender bias complaints are workplace complaints.
Oh, those are all workplace.
Those are workplace complaints. So
okay. All right.
They're very different.
Understood.
I just have one last question. On the chart in the report for unauthorized tactics, which shows 840 allegations, 34 sustained. I remember an Inspector General's report which told us that it was difficult for the Inspector General to audit that category since so many of those unauthorized authorized force use complaints are non-categorical. And as a result, there was not a lot of supporting documentation in those. And at the time, unless I'm remembering incorrectly, the department said it was going to make some changes to try to improve that. I'm just wondering where we are on that.
Kevin, maybe you can correct me. But I think based upon, that was an audit from last year, was it? And Use of Force Review Division. I mean, we basically changed the policy and how we investigate complaints of unauthorized force now. In the past, sometimes a complaint wouldn't be taken if everything was adequately addressed in the use of force investigation. But now we no longer do that. We take complaints. So we usually wait for the non-cat use of force investigation to be completed, and then we investigate the allegations that are made by the complainant, and we do that separately from the use of force investigation. So we're investigating those all now as separate complaints.
And maybe the Inspector General can help me out in what I'm remembering and what I'm trying to ask about this.
Yes, Commissioner, I think you're referring to the non-categorical report that we did a while back where we looked at the entire system, the entire body of non-cat investigations, the non-categorical uses of force. And we looked at all of them, and they're broken into 2 categories, a level 1 and a level 2. And the report, I believe, showed that about 90% of those non-categoricals are that level 2. And the level 2 has kind of summarized procedures for investigating it. And that when we looked at the documentation for those level 2s, it was very hard for us to get any of the underlying data to determine the quality of the investigation. That we couldn't say it was good, we couldn't say it was bad, we just didn't have the available information to examine those level 2 non-categorical uses of force in comparison to the level 1s, which had a much more robust investigative protocol as far as some of the steps that the department would take. And so most notably in the level 2 complaints, it was hard to determine if there was any conflict of evidence because we would get generally a summarization of what the investigating officer saw, which would generally be something to the effect of there was no conflict between the evidence and the officer's statement and the inability for us to dive beyond that.
In your sense, the department has responded adequately to the recommendations from that audit and how they would show up here in this report?
I would have to look at that system again, but I would believe that some of the issues that we had previously talked about still exist today.
Okay. Well, that's what I was curious about. And if in fact that's the case, I guess I would like you to look at that. And if in fact that's the case, then I would like you to come back, either work with the department and come back to us to help us understand how the department can make more progress on that, again, to help improve the accuracy of the reports we're getting.
Yes. Any other questions?
I'll second the motion. Was it seconded?
We haven't done a motion yet, but we have. I assume we have some comment cards.
Yes, sir. We have 10 comment cards. The first 5: Jamie Garcia, Wayne Spindler, Angela James, Hamid Khan, and Pete White.
In 20 minutes.
This is really not a time to be leaving, so that's a little bit disappointing because this is pretty serious. It looks down and it breaks down the structure of our police, of LAPD, and so I think it's really important to hear what the community has to think about this, so that was really disappointing to see that exit. So I was noticing 30,782 complaints, 2,483 sustained. You know, and I'm just going to kind of go through and uplift other ones that weren't talked about. So discourtesy, which should really be abusive language. When you're thinking about a police officer with a gun, actually, you know, being discourteous, being abusive, that's really something that's scary to think about how that's impacting the community. False imprisonment, I can't even believe that's on there. So 2,216, 0.1, less than 0.1 sustained. So we're seeing like a form of torture, but not believing in the community when they say that. And one thing that Kathleen Kim brought up that I think is really important to look at in the context of all the statistics that are being showed is this kind of the opinion of the police officers being involved in the investigation. So then when we see false statements at 641, but only 126 sustained, we still see 24% of police officers actually making false statements. So how can we even believe in this investigation that there's, you know, any type of truth being told? So, and I, you know, appreciate what Robert Saltzman said here, and the people actually taking the time to come in and make these complaints. So we really need to take these more seriously. And I'm wondering what the disciplinary action is with those that are sustained, because it really feels like we're being framed as a community of liars, that we actually take the time to, out of our busy days, people are working 9 to 5, people are being detained by police officers, people are going through that experience, people are being impacted, people actually go forward and file these complaints, and then they're not being believed. So I think that we really need to kind of reconsider what this is showing. And again, it's really disappointing to see the president have left at this point.
The next speaker.
Commander Maislin or Mr. Rogan, could you clarify table 1 on page 5? These are all of the complaints for complaints against officers in their entire realm of activity, in their world of activity. So workplace, interactions with the community, et cetera. Is that?
That's correct. The 32 categories represent complaints both made by citizens and complaints administratively initiated by the department investigating its own personnel in the workplace.
And can you clarify among these categories of complaints, which are the categories where we will see more complaints from civilians?
Some of the more common ones, the reference to false imprisonment probably gives to the layperson a different view than what that's construed by the department. By the department, that refers to a detention, an unlawful detention. In other words, when somebody stopped, is there a proper basis by the officers to stop? That's often contested, and that involves whether an officer has reasonable suspicion. So we're getting into the constitutional issues and the law. But the force issues, the detention issues, and the arrest issues are the ones most common, and discourtesy are the ones that most commonly involve citizen complaints. Improper remarks is also a verbal issue, but that's within the workplace. So the work.
Yeah, I found the placement of this table in this particular report a bit confusing because it's difficult to parse out which categories of complaints are actually submitted by civilians versus other officers in the workplace. So.
Well, we may be able to work with Commander Maislin to provide you another table in the quarterly discipline report to break those down. Some of them may overlap a little bit, but it may be possible for us to break down those that are primarily from the field versus those that are primarily from the workplace.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll continue with the public comment. We have Wayne, Angela James, Hamid Khan, and Pete White.
Yes, your city council right now over across the street is hard at work right now. Yes, they're playing music over there with Herb Wesson and his city council. So you can dial on the radio station 213-621-CITI. And I'm taking requests right now on our Los Angeles City website and available.
Topic or
online.
pass the mic?
And I'm taking requests, like, for example,
Last warning.
the bias policing complaints. For example, the bald-headed individual there that just talked to me about police bias and other types of things that impact all Negroes in the country. And now we notice that the main Negro ain't here. He stepped out right now to dance. He's gone over there to dance. He don't want to talk about bias policing. And right now, even though we're talking about bias policing, they have all of their experts over there getting up and trying to find a way to illegally lynch and detain me again like they did on November the 10th, 2015, which the gentleman over there don't want to talk about.
Stay on topic.
I filed a police complaint with your internal affairs, and I never got a receipt number. What the hell the number is on that receipt number for that complaint? Because every complaint form is supposed to have a number. They have to have a number, but I don't have no number. So nobody here, 1,356 people filed, and they ain't nothing sustained. One person went to something called mediation. Yes, well, let's just all be calm right now. Enjoy the music as everybody gets beaten and shot for being in redevelopment zones.
Take your seat, please.
Courtesy of Steve Soboroff. Peace, brother.
Angela James.
I'm Dr. Angela James from Black Lives Matter, and I am really very concerned with the whole approach of this meeting. Individual racist police are certainly a problem, but assessing those problems are not going to help us with patterns of bias. And certainly this commission is aware of this. It is incredibly difficult to imagine that the president of the commission would, at the point of public comment on this issue, leave the room. And that, along with the way this entire system is put together, is really indicative that it is, in fact, a system to show the appearance but not a response to actual public concern. I think individual solutions to a very public problem are in order, and I would encourage you to think about the ways in which you show your disparagement of the community and your unwillingness to enforce the public's will that the police, public servants, have accountability. This meeting is absolutely an example of everything that is wrong. You're facing a crisis of public confidence. This data is simply illustrative of that, but this meeting is even more so. Thanks.
Hamid Khan, followed by Pete White. And then the next five are Akili, Yvonne Michelle Autry, Prentice Jenkins, Ted Hayes, and Mr. Herman.
So 30,782 comes to 27 a day, the year 2012 to 2014. So 27 complaints a day, like every hour, something is going on. And this whole landscape, as the doctor just spoke about, goes to show the corruption, the malfeasance, and it's almost amusing sometimes to look at accidental discharge, alcohol-related, insubordination. Alcohol-related was sustained 79%. Insubordination was sustained 78%. That didn't get up. But of course, when it comes to people, biased policing, 1356, 0 is sustained. And I think we need to speak about this whole issue of he said, she said, Soboroff, because that is That is very degrading because we're talking about racism. Racism is not he said, she said. Racism is felt right here, in your body, in your mind. It's not he said, she said. Nobody comes up and starts talking about that person is racist. People don't, but what you're saying is racist. What you're saying is white supremacist. What you're saying is anchored in your white privilege. To degrade that, to demean that, to lower that to that level, that racial profiling and racism is he said, she said. And you will remain shameless as you always are. Completely insensitive, completely removed from the realities of the world. And to talk about mediation, to say, why don't people come? Ever thought of this novel idea about distrust of LAPD? About distrust of the system? Salzman did speak about people making the time to go and file these complaints, but based on their history, it's complete distrust. Why would they come and come into mediation? So I think this is exactly the landscape of this rotten institution. Every
Next, please.
Pete White.
So if someone finds Matt Johnson running to his car, could you please tell him he has homework to do tonight? Could he please Google Andre Barreau and John Mack, the last black dude that sat in the chair that he sits in today? And John Mack's statement that he was flummoxed in 2004, 5, and 6, that not one racial or one bias policing complaint was ever sustained. Let him know he sits in the same seat that John Mack sat in. The other thing that is very incredulous to me is this idea that the workplace environment somehow does not inform what happens in the street, right? And so when you look at alcohol-related, 170 allegations, 79 sustained. Insubordination, so for folks who don't know, that's people within this department who are saying, screw authority and leadership, I'm doing my own thing. 119 allegations, 78% sustained, right? I think Matt was onto something when he started talking about gender bias, but he allowed the internal affairs to talk him straight down and out of that. When you look at 29 allegations and 52% was sustained. This talks about a mindset within the department, and you're telling us, we're not listening, but you're asking us to believe that that mindset, that environment within the department somehow doesn't trickle out on the streets. That bias doesn't happen on the streets. Well, if it happens within the department, it's definitely going down on the streets. And then the ethnic remark one was very interesting to me. While there was only 172 allegations and only 8 were sustained, I have to think about Sergeant Wright in Central Division. The way that his ethnic remark complaint was sustained was a couple of $1 million because he got a watermelon on, he got a birthday cake with chicken legs and watermelons on top of them in Central Division. That's the way ethnic remarks are handled in this city. Look at the entire, ask the questions about the entire sheet, because this is the environment which has trickled down into our communities.
Akili, followed by Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Good afternoon. Well, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I cannot believe. I grew up in a segregated society, and I know and understand racism. You didn't have to put the sign there. We knew it. And for this police reporting process to say that they could not sustain one racial bias complaint is unbelievable in this day and age. Unbelievable in this day and age. Let me make a couple of recommendations. First of all, you have a real trust and credibility because people don't believe that even if they file the complaint, it's ever going to be processed or supported. And secondly, when there is one that's supported, and even when a police is found out of policy and nothing is done, that sends a much more powerful message to a complainer than any other thing that you could do. So in the case of the killing of Ezell Ford, where the police were found out of policy and nothing happened, and the city knew that, why would I file a complaint? Help me understand that. Why would I file a complaint? Because nothing's going to happen there. I would make 3 recommendations. One, that you take the complaint process and put it in community-based organizations. Secondly, that you have civilians take the complaint process in a designated area. And thirdly, that the number of complaints be publicly reported, not just on the website that I may or may not see, but in the Sentinel, in the LA Times, and in other places that I may see it. First, I need to know that you can be trusted, and you got a lot of work there to do. Secondly, at least if I'm going to file a complaint, let me do it with a civilian. And then thirdly, let me see and understand what happened to the report once I filed it. If you could do those 3 things, you may get a little further along. Thank you.
I do also think that we need to have a civilian oversight committee. I have submitted numerous complaints regarding police officers that have stalked me, that have called me baby when I was dressed in my jogging outfit. I guess they thought I was a crackhead on San Julian. Also, when I filed the report, one police officer, in order to undermine the credibility of my report, accused me of being inebriated at the time of my report at the original police department. Again, what we're seeking to do here is to purge the department of police officers who are acting in a biased, racist manner. In order to bring about real justice and proper policing without regard to race, gender, or economic status, we have got to identify the police officers who are not serving and protecting without regard to gender, race, or economic status. In order to identify these police officers and purge them so that we can actually have this commitment to the improvement, upliftment, and to the real I think the goal of this democratic republic, we have to make sure that you are listening to us, identify these police officers, purge the department of these police officers, and then we can celebrate those few police officers, peace officers, who are really serving and protecting us, again, without regard to race, gender, economic status, physical or mental challenging, notwithstanding, the SMART teams, which I think are not properly trained. Again, I think that's another lie to justify the extermination of certain people that you don't want in this community. So again, we need you to listen, and because I'm sure that these police officers have many complaints against these specific officers, upwards of 300 to 500 complaints unfounded. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. In the process of incriminating the whistleblower, the witnesses, and the survivors of your abuse. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Prentice Jenkins, followed by Tud Hayes and Mr. Herman.
That's it.
Wow, sometimes it just falls in your lap. Like when a hooker gives you a lap dance. Steve, you know. Come on. You know, Steve. I see this right here. Integrity in all we say and do. 1,300 complaints. And not one of them, not one cop was disciplined. 1,300 complaints. Integrity in all we do. I told my mother that too when I was trying to steal $5 out of her purse and she caught me. I said, I don't know why you don't trust me with my hand in her purse at 11 years old. That's what you are. I never see cops as authority figures. I see them as individual people, because that's where you get cops. You get them from the general public, and they're going to do exactly what people do in the general public. There are stalkers in the general public. There are cops that are going to stalk people. Yes, there are firemen that are going to stalk people. There are cops that are going to murder people. You got murderers in the general public. Well, there are cops that are going to do that too. Henry Solis is sitting in the county jail. Don't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. LAPD officer Henry Solis. LAPD officer, Stephanie Lazarus. Remember her? Y'all covered hers up for 25 years. The woman murdered a woman. And the freaking cops, 3 chiefs covered it up for 25 years. And all you cops whispered about her. Did she do it? Did she do it? She murdered Sherry Rasmussen because Sherry Rasmussen took her boyfriend and went into her house and murdered her. And all the cops, all they did was whisper. Did she do it? You think she did it? Huh? Do you? Yeah, that's who you are. You go home and tell your children to tell the truth. And then you come to work and you engage in cover-ups. I can't believe you can look at your children.
First things first, I don't know whether that's a shield or a badge, but if you don't have that image on your screen, look behind you and see what we're looking at. That's a redacted police badge, shield, poorly redacted. Why would anyone put something like that up on a screen in public? Why? Who does that? Who's responsible for that image on the screen behind you? If you want to delegate to the police department, police officers, that's a good way to do it. That kind of dump, even the redacting is poor. Los Angeles isn't completely wiped out. The show number isn't wiped out. Why do you do things like this? All right, back to information. I had an encounter with 3 officers, 1 sergeant, 2 patrol officers, and an officer in the station. They gave me the business card because this is something that came out of the consent decree. And every phone number on the card is inoperable. It no longer works. How can I complain when I call in and they say, this number is no longer operating? But every one of these officers had the same number on the card that's non-functional. Now, this is just paper, okay? We can produce lots of paper. Why can't we update the telephone numbers, and why get rid of the number that currently exists? That's my question. So, you've heard the incredibility of some of the reports you've got. I'm glad that some of you commissioners are paying attention to that. Thank you for saying, come back to us with something that makes some sense, but also come back to us and tell us who designed these things to give these fictitious, ridiculous reports. Someone has to be responsible for that image on the screen up there, and someone has to be responsible for the information provided to you today that makes no sense. The people who did that knew it was senseless to begin with.
Sounds like a rough cough. But there's nothing obvious about a rough cough when it comes to the concern of the public. No empathy, no gratitude. No concern. No concern. All your constituents have said everything I thought about saying, and I can't say much. The actions of protection against the impairments that you created, to those who are your civilians, to those who reference the law but are not protected by the law. Incidentally, they're discriminated under the color of the law, under the constitution of the state law that you violate when you say you're following a charter, a city charter. But it's not a city charter no longer. It's a developer's dream to corrupt the system, to hold us and oppress us by our skin. Come to our meetings, not 1. Come to our meetings, not 2. Why? Because you take us through this motion of sickness, a deliberate action. So nothing's wrong with the system. What's wrong is that the obvious wrong is your rough cough. That you get to sit here and listen to every aspect of our point. And at the end, the situation goes on, unnoticed, on deaf ears. Listen to your public. Follow your constituents' concerns.
And there are no other public comment cards on this item?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. We're now on 4D.
Thank you.
Thank you. Department's report dated December 9th, 2015, relative to the fiscal year 2015-2016 proposed interim budget strategic plan.
A lot thinner than the last paper.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Captain Jeff Burt of the Strategic Planning Group, and before you have the fiscal year 2015-16 proposed interim budget. In putting this together, there are about seven individual asks. All of them are tied to our strategic plan, that plan that was released back in July of this year, which outlays about 10 goals for the chief and for us to achieve the safest big city in 2020. So this interim budget is just broken down into more specifics. I can get as specific as you need, I think. But the first of the 7 requests is requesting sworn and civilian positions to actually create strategic planning group. Right now, it's one captain, me, and on loan about five police officers, and we're requesting to build a group similar to what we did with the consent decree when we actually put a group of people together and put them on a map and created a division. That's what we're asking for this, because we believe how important it is. Really putting our money where our mouth is. The second, the civilian hiring expansion for Central Reset. If you've probably had a report on the Safer Cities. We're changing Safer Cities and kind of reemphasizing a reset program, which is Recovery Enhancement Services and Enforcement Team. And in that program, while we're partnering with LASA and Department of Mental Health, we're also building out a civilian support staff that we don't have right now to deal with the taking people's property and storing it safely, to deal with better crime analysis, etc. The third is a sworn positions to support the full expansion of body-worn video and digital in-car video. A couple weeks ago, you got the 2016-17 budget, and that's a big ask for the 82 folks from lieutenant all the way down to senior clerk typist for body-worn video. This is a very specific request for body-worn and digital in-car that we're asking for right now, 13 sergeants, 7 detectives, 10 officers, a total of 30 cops, to really get us out into the divisions where those cameras are being implemented, to start using evidence.com as much as we need to, because we're getting, as you've heard, such a prolific amount of video. The fourth is a position we're asking for under the position mitigation of risk. This is for the risk management division. We're asking for 1 sergeant 2, as they've had in the past. And again, this position is designed specifically to help the director mitigate risk. The fifth is a strategic workforce planning study, in which this is really actually fulfilling the COA's direction from the City Council to conduct a staffing study of the LAPD. It's going to be a role and skills gap analysis in order to identify long-term solutions to improve operational and budgetary predictability and efficiency. The sixth is something that we're working on out of Strategic Planning Group, and that is the implementation of community trust surveys. My folks and I have been working with the Chief of Staff and Dr. Yoshida and Hart Research, Fred Yang, to develop a survey, a 27-question survey that we're rolling out. 2,000. We're going to conduct a survey in January, 2,000 folks to understand the fear of crime, the satisfaction, and the trust of police. We're going to bias that, or we're going to put more surveys into some of the areas that we think and LAPD thinks have been, marred by, public relations. We're looking a lot harder at 77th, at Newton, at Southeast, and Southwest. And then finally, the replacement of the end of life cycle of the CAD, the crime analysis system, with the next generation 911 system. And that's the biggest ask out of this $8 point something million budget. This is about $6.8 million of that. But that system is absolutely critical in that it's not just an upgrade. It's replacing an end of life cycle system that's going to make dispatching faster, provide officers with stronger location information, and hopefully improve our response times. So those are the seven things on the budget.
When did these hit council?
The
Public safety today?
No, that was the body worn was today. It's going to hit council. The CAO has indicated to us that they're going to handle this request as part along with the 1617. So we'll see this when it goes forward after April.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Do we have any speaker cards on this item?
We have one speaker card. We have Mr. Wayne Spindler.
Yes, they'll get you your budget, but still at City Hall, they're still playing music. As soon as they're done, they'll be able to get you some money over there real soon. I got a text message from Herb Wesson. The money's coming very soon. That's all he said. So, fiscal year. Yes, how the time flies. All of the money's been spent. The Inspector General, everybody doesn't have any more money. It's all gone. Charlie Beck is gone. He's running over and inspecting all 300 LAUSD schools this morning because in the strategic plan, the schools want to make sure if there's any potential threat that Charlie Beck will shut down all the schools and send all the kids home. That's what happened this morning. So I know none of you on the panel here have children over the age of 35, so they don't go to school, but in your proposed interim budget, you can always modify it. So one of the things you need to do in that budget, you got to put in some money because a gentleman by the name of Michael Hunt, who was illegally arrested on November the 10th, is going to need $420,000. That's what he asked for. You can put it in the budget. It's a strategic plan because he was illegally arrested. Now, as for me, I was arrested illegally but detained 13 and a half hours. What's your strategic plan for that? Well, I spoke to former Councilman Bill Rosendahl last night at the Health Commission meeting. We had a little talk about that. Well, you guys don't have a plan for that. So what's next? You break in the house and steal another one of my computers? I strap this thing to my ass. This one, you're not getting this one, Steve.
There are no other comment cards on this.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You all have a great holiday season.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now on item number 4E, Department's Report dated December 11, 2015, relative to the preventable and non-preventable traffic collision audit, AD number 14-060.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Police Performance Auditor Jeffrey Phillips, currently the officer in charge at Audit Division. Commissioners, before you have the preventable and non-preventable traffic collision audit. We've conducted this audit in previous years, and in the previous audit, 2010-2011, there were some recommendations that were made. I wanted to point out that on page 1, on its status recommendation, it is actually the status is actually implemented. Policy and Procedures Division actually changed policy to going to reflect stricter tracking of timeliness for traffic collision reports, and also addressed the language pertaining to the criteria utilized in classifying traffic collisions. I want to touch on some of the areas that we went ahead and measured. There's a total of 5 objectives, and the department did well with appropriate traffic collision classification, timely review of traffic collision reports, and traffic collision accurately reflected in the officers' teams too. There are some other areas, however, that we identified as needing some areas for improvement, and that was looking at objective 4A and 4B that are somewhat related. That's the accrual of 3 points in 24 months. We went ahead and looked at whether there was action items created in teams 2 for the officers that had accrued the 3 points in a 24-month period. And at that time, we saw that there are no action items created in Teams 2. So we followed up and looked at whether there was any completion of directed training, and 5 out of the 6 actually did receive the training, the directed training. So it wasn't documented on Teams 2, but 5 out of the 6 did receive the directed training. We had, under objective number 5, we looked at the review of level 3, officer with level 3 preventable traffic collisions, and we looked at the same related criteria. And for those involved with level 3 preventable traffic collisions, there was none that, out of the 8, there was none that had the action item created on their Teams 2, and half of the 8 had actually gone through the directed training. In addition, just want to point out that there was just additional information that we included in this report pertaining to various other factors in regard to preventable and non-preventable traffic collisions, and that started on page number 8. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions if the Commission has any.
Any questions? I appreciate the report. Thank you. Any comments?
We have 2 comment cards. We have Wayne and we have Mr. Herman.
Yes, in life, we do have preventable and non-preventable traffic collisions. And I'm glad that the department makes a difference. Preventable traffic collisions, well, basically those are those that should not happen. But then we have the non-preventable traffic collisions. You know, like for example, when you're late to a ball game, and you got to run a couple of people off the road over there going up the Chavez Ravine, it's non-preventable. Yes, it's a traffic collision, but the important thing is to get to the game on time. And preventable, well, I really don't think when it involves a police department member, really, I don't think it's preventable. I think all of these collisions should be deemed non-preventable. So you should go to the city council, which again, damn it, I'm checking their meeting. It's 213-621 City. They're still playing music, but don't worry. Herb Wesson will be getting you the money as soon as they're done in their closed session. I apologize for the delay. But non-preventable traffic collisions are really police department people. Now, the rest of us, yes, the rest of us, well, we can prevent ourselves from getting to work. And that's why it takes 3 hours to get here from Porter Ranch down here and back. But you guys just put on the sirens, issue a code 3, and go full lights. And if you run over a few of us, believe me, we understand. The important thing is to get to the ball game, to get to the Clippers games on time, so that the police officers and the commissioners get to their seats early, so they don't miss the Star-Spangled Banner. That's really important. I really appreciate this report.
So many definitions in the word of preventable and non-preventable traffic collisions. But let's talk in light of a preventable accident. When an elected official was cruising down Boyle Heights and was involved in a collision, no sobriety test, got to sit at the curb and cool off, and walked away scot-free, the same way he walked away from Francine Godoy for an undisclosed amount of the tax rate payers' money for having sex at City Hall. How inappropriate is that? But that's just a reminder of a reflection of the truth that supersedes a preventable and non-preventable traffic collision. Collisions can be in multiple ways looked at from a different perspective. One objectively and one indiscriminately. But nothing prevails when the abusers abuse it to the point of the color of the badge. Not pointing my hands at any good officer, because we have many in LAPD who, by a budget, you, Eric Garcetti, the mayor of the city of Los Angeles, has forgotten to give our rank and file their raises. Expedite their raises this Christmas for Hanukkah, not with Monica, and give it to them. Fine officers in blue deserve that raise. The one promise, not in increments, but in a passive-aggressive, preventable and non-preventable traffic collision with the reality. Manage this city with a true budget that reflects on the real issues of this definition of preventable and non-preventable collisions.
There are no other comment cards on this item.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? All in favor? Motion moves.
Thank you. We're now on item number 4G, Department's report dated December 9, 2015, relative to the bias policing update, third quarter 2015 report.
Hello again.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure, where we left off and what's left to discuss on the bias policing report.
This all really ties into the same kind of issues, really tie into what we've already discussed.
If you have specific questions regarding this quarterly report, I'll be happy to answer them. I know you've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb.
I do not. Do we have any comment cards on this?
We have 4 comment cards on this item. We have a card for Rodney King. We have Wayne, Hamid Khan, and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Prentice Jenkins, City Life newsletter, activist since 1991. Is that cops that have been killed? That's what you're putting up there as respect? Or is that some George Orwell thing?
Please stay on topic to the bias policing.
No, I just want to know what that is. Is that 19? You should put obey in the middle of it. Anyway, folks, let's get back. Bias police. It says bias police update. Thank you for that update. Well, it was great. 1,000 people complaining. Now, one officer was disciplined. Thank you for coming in here and telling us that you're honest and above board. We can see just how honest the LAPD is. Eventually, you're going to have to put together that subcommittee that I asked you to. I presented a proposal, and you all, like Steve, he's asleep right now. He's getting a couple of Z's. I presented you with a proposal, and you shot the proposal down because you want to go with, your regular, let's cover it all up. I can't believe, you guys really believe that you're honest. Yeah, you really do. You have a different understanding of what honest means. Honest means telling the truth. It does not mean towing the blue line. Cops believe honest is toe the blue line. Dorner did not toe the blue line. He wouldn't told on his training officer, and he was the one that got kicked out. Y'all keep proving Christopher Dorner right. Why would you want to do that? Cops keep proving him right. That's psycho right. So you got to be more psycho than he is, or he was.
Wayne.
Yes, the lady cop said, "Oh, Lord. Well, that's the way it goes. Bias policing. I'm not the one doing that. I'm just here to comment about it, that's all." So, an update from City Hall. They did stop playing the music, but they're still in closed session. They'll be getting your money real soon. And then you can update your fourth quarter report But I know you ran out of money. You couldn't get the fourth quarter in. So you could get up to the third quarter because that's all the funding that was left for December the 9th. But bias policing really it's really a joke in this city. I mean, to even talk about the subject, it should not even be talked about. What is bias policing? There's no such thing as bias policing. You just police. That's all. So when somebody wants to go down and develop an area where there's a bunch of homelessness, you start policing the area. So you get rid of the poor schmucks out of there because your surveyors and your planners can't get in there and do their city plan and get the funding for the city development, the redevelopment money, unless you get those homeless off those sidewalks. You can't see if they're sitting there sleeping, minding their own business. That's all this police department's for. This police department is a private citizen developer mafia enforcement bureau. That's all it is. So when you dial 911, you can't get the sheriff's department. Give people the option when you call 911 on your cell phone to have LAPD or the sheriff's department respond. Now, there was a black lady in the 10 freeway. She tried that, but on video, she got the shit beat out of her because that violates Steve Sobroff's number 2 rule. Don't talk back to the cops.
We have a card for Hamid Khan, and he's not here. Yvonne Michelle Autry.
I think Hamid Khan is gone. Yes. Okay. Again, yeah, I think it's very interesting that Wayne would bring that up. Even post Safer Cities initiative as a stakeholder downtown for the last 13 years in April, I do believe that the police officers have been commissioned, of course, by the landlords and those that seek to redevelop our community without regard to what I call the indigenous people who were here prior to the regentrification effort downtown. And it's a private task force, mercenary, paramilitary, black ops, special op type of extermination, Illuminati-driven vision, I guess, for downtown in favor of those who generate the most revenue, of course, for the city. However, again, you have to remember this is a democracy, even if we have to show up every week here and at the city council to remind you that we do have a right to housing and a quality of life, notwithstanding the incrimination, the negative stereotypes and stigmas that still are attached, and the demonization that still are attached to the whistleblowers, the witnesses, the eyewitnesses, and the survivors of surveillance and excessive use of force. Again, I stand against crime in the street, whether it's criminal activity in the street. Crime is crime, but again, we're here to address any type of criminal activity, bias policing, uses of excessive force that violate the civil rights of those of us who are represented here continually. Black people, people of color, poor people. Again, we're not going to be exclusive organ donors for Israel. We're not going to be those who are victims of experiments for the eugenics. And this goes back because Jewish people should be very sensitive to that. Don't forget your history and subjugate those of us who you think are expendable.
And we have no other comment cards on this item?
Do I have a motion?
Move approval of item 4G.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion moved.
Thank you. We're now on item number 4H. Department's report dated December 11, 2015, relative to the quarterly discipline report, third quarter 2015.
Do we have any commissioner questions? Do we have any comment cards on this
We
item?
have 4 comment cards. We have Wayne, Yvonne Michelle Autry, Mr. Herman, and Angela James.
Yes, I appreciate the number of questions that you asked about that report, and I know that your concern for all of us is very moving. I mean, some of these questions you asked them just now about this report, I mean, I could hardly hear what it was, but it was earth-shattering. I mean, Mr. Saltzman has to go to the head now, because I'm telling you, it was so nerve-wracking, to hear that kind of questioning. I mean, you put this witness on the spot. I mean, he doesn't know what to do. Look at him.
Can you stay on topic?
Yeah,
to the
all right, but
discipline report, please?
I'm saying that your witnesses shouldn't be bashed like that. You shouldn't batter your expert witnesses. I mean, they're just paid to talk about these reports. Look at the guy. He's shaking. I mean, the questions that you asked him were just so thoroughly.
Any questions or comments
I
about
mean,
this report?
yeah, but I'm just saying that. I don't get mad at me. You got all these men with these weapons, but risk management and harm reduction. I mean, whew. I mean, the questions, I couldn't believe it.
Topic is the quarterly discipline report.
Okay, well,
Last one.
I mean, it's okay. You got your quarterly discipline report, but third quarter. Oh, by the way, for that phone, I'll take that when I'm done. Now, so I'm taking phone calls here. So on the third quarter. I mean, it looks like the same as GHEEO, yo. It looks like a rap song, but it's all right. I mean, the Office of the Inspector General, I mean, he has to produce these reports because he's got to do something for his $350,000 salary. I mean, you gotta do something, because if you don't have reports, you're not earning your money. So that's it. So. I'm not going to take the rest of the 2 minutes, because I know Saltzman is very disturbed right now, so thank you.
Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Well, again, I'd like to take this opportunity to recommend that you do allow us to nominate Citizens Oversight Committee. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to continue to encourage and to acknowledge and to commend and to appreciate the peace officers that do serve and protect without regard to race, economic status, and gender. And I'd also like to take this opportunity in exposing something that happened to me with regard to a dispatch, which I do believe is on topic. I was being sexually harassed and stalked by a white female. And when I called the police this was over a period of 3 years, about 20 separate times. At one point, the police officers were dispatched armed with their weapons drawn, and they had been told that this white female had called the police and had dispatched these police officers armed with their weapons drawn to my apartment, that she had called the police on me. So I don't know what type of internal affairs situation that existed. And then when she was questioned, she said, well, I had a brother up in the ranks, I suppose, that was responsible for that problem in the dispatch. So, again, in the systemic review to make sure that we do not have any iniquity within the system, but I do know that there is systemic racism and maintenance of the status quo, whether it's white supremacy or inclusive, of course, of the pedigree, house Negroes that are ever effective in serving and protecting who they serve and protect. Again, I just want that for the record so that we can continue to expose any discrimination, any bias policing, and so that we can hopefully have more of a positive report for real police officers that are serving and protecting, not abusing, not exterminating, stalking.
Thank you for your comments.
Terrorizing.
Wow. Risk management, reduction strategy. But there was
The topic
none,
is the quarterly discipline report.
But there was none submitted on the report here, incidentally, regarding the discipline report. There are no calculations or a matrix to this breakdown for the public to review. But yet, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Landowner, Mr. Commissioner, your strategy of oppression on not allowing the reports to be open with transparency is a discussion of matter of public interest. Not that I am against Terry Bradshaw next to you, but I am talking about the issue in regards to the discipline report for the third quarter of 2015 as set forth. This report was dated from December 11th relative to the quarterly, but with no transparency for the public. So how can we imagine, point a finger, talk about the subject in the controlled commission board of the LAPD if it harms us or if it's not accurate, up to date? City of Los Angeles constantly provides us with the action of not submitted, no public inquiry submitted. Is it any different today than it was yesterday? It's only a question.
Bless you.
Thank you, Ms. Kim.
Angela James. Okay, there's no other public comment cards, sir.
Do I have a motion?
Move approval of the item.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you. We're now on 4I, Department's Report dated December 10th, 2015, relative to the third quarterly risk management and harm reduction status report.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, it is. My notes all refer to the morning, but I can correct that.
Wishful thinking.
Yes. Well, good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the Commission. My name is Mike Himes, and I serve as the Department Risk Manager. With me is Captain Dominic Choi, the commanding officer of our Risk Management Division. As you know, our overall strategy focuses on reducing physical, organizational, and financial harms in 4 specific areas: use of force, employee-involved traffic collisions, work-related injuries, and workplace conflict. In April, we presented an overview of our progress in implementing our strategy and some detail on workplace injuries. In our September report, we focused on employee-involved traffic collisions. This afternoon, I would like to give you an overview of some of the steps we've taken since our last presentation, and after that, Captain Choi will focus on the specific area of workplace conflict. As you may recall, one of the key components to our strategy is placing a risk management coordinator in each of the 21 geographic areas. The risk management coordinator serves as a point of contact for our problem-solving teams and provides overall coordination at the divisional level for dealing with risk issues. We now have pilot risk management coordinators at 5 divisions and are doing a rolling implementation as we see what works and how to modify the next one. Ideally, we would like to increase the speed of the rollout as we develop standardized reporting and use existing personnel and realign duties. However, finding staffing assigned to a single-purpose RMC has been a challenge. We are working with the Office of Operations and the Mayor's Office to find staffing and seek authorities. And as you also know, the City Attorney's Office has recently appointed a risk manager to help roll out programs that work citywide. We're working in very close coordination with her and her office, and they have reported they're very supportive of our program structure and our goals. Some of what we're doing is heightening awareness in the organization of both specific and general risk management issues. To that end, we're working with the Employer Relations Group to include risk management as an area of performance on our standard-based assessment, the employee's annual evaluation. For example, in the risk management standard, the specific area of employee-involved TCs may be addressed by stating, practices safe driving, wears seatbelts, and understands or complies with pursuit policy. For workplace conflict, engages in respectful conduct in the workplace and understands or complies with the policy on discrimination and harassment. And then for supervisors, recognizes and addresses conflict within the workplace and works to ensure a safe workplace to reduce injuries. A draft's been completed of the additions to the SBA, and we need to consult with the League to make the modifications. However, I think that setting risk management as a fundamental component in our expectations of performance increases the likelihood of long-lasting behavioral change. I think the success of the department's strategy rests upon employee awareness and behavior. To reach all stakeholders, RMD is working on various efforts to communicate the harm reduction strategy to the department's 13,000 sworn and civilian employees. RMD now has a website on the department's network. Our communication efforts also include presentations at direct report, command, and general staff meetings, and in the command development program. Safety and harm reduction messaging is also published on the network and in department newsletters. Alongside this effort, we're close to rolling out radio broadcast and mobile digital communications to deliver safety and other harm reduction messaging. As I mentioned before, we are also working closely with the Office of the City Attorney and the newly appointed Risk Manager in that office to develop and coordinate processes and solutions, especially in the areas of work-related injuries and workplace conflict. The Department continues to use liability management committees to identify and mitigate potential employment claims. Captain Choi will now brief you on our efforts in the area of workplace conflict. When he concludes, we'll give you a brief update on our efforts in the other areas of concern.
Thank you.
Captain.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So what have we been doing? Much like some of the other areas in workplace conflict, we've been talking to our internal experts as well as our external experts. Internal experts, some of the people we talked to were BSS, Workplace Investigation Section, that's Internal Affairs, Employee Relations Group, our peer support members, commanding officers, and also members of the Police Protective League as well as the president of the league. We've also met with the HR department at Toyota Corporation. We've worked extensively with professors from the Pepperdine School of Law, Strauss Institute for Dispute Resolution, as well as the City Attorney's Office. Not only the City Attorney is dealing with employee litigation, but also the newly appointed Risk Manager at the City Attorney's Office. We've also done a robust analysis of the data related to claims and lawsuits from 2012 to September 2015. So that's kind of what we've been doing. So what do we find out? So between 2012 and 14, for 3 years, per every 1,000 employees, approximately 3 employees filed a claim, which averaged about 38 per year over the last 3 years. And then 1.6 employees filed a lawsuit, or an average of 21 lawsuits per year over that same time period. So currently in 2015, we went up to September 2015, and we have 19 claims filed and 19 lawsuits filed. But it looks like we're decreasing our numbers. In claims, we actually are decreasing by about 34%. But in lawsuits, as of September, we had 19, and like I said, we average about 21 per year. If you calculate it out per 1,000 employees, we're up slightly in lawsuits. But that's necessarily not an indicator of a positive or negative trend, because there's significant timing differences in payouts and when the behavior actually occurred or the alleged behavior may have occurred. So there's not a direct correlation. I just want to make that clear. It's not a correlation to today's environment at the workplace.
Captain Choi, just a question for clarification. So 19 claims that have also turned into lawsuits, or are these separate categories?
No, these are claims that have been filed. They could be denied.
I see.
They're
and then
still
19
pending.
separate lawsuits.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so we looked at our closed lawsuits, meaning closed through the City Attorney's Office, paid out, all appeal process, everything has been exhausted. So that's what we would consider closed. So in the last 3 years, we had 59, and in the current year through September, we had 10, so a total of 69. Of the 59 in the last 3 years, 64%, or 38 of them, had payouts totaling $32.2 million. This current year, out of 10 of them, 8 of them had payouts totaling $6.4 million. And then we looked at the total of 69. We said, okay, let's look at those that are more than $100,000. And so out of 69 lawsuits, we had 30 that had payouts over $100,000, but that equated to $37.2 million of the $38 million payout, so 96%. So again, just like we saw in employee violent traffic, a smaller number of lawsuits equate to the majority of the payout. 54 of those were settled. 54% of those were settled prior to trial. 63% of them originated at a specialized unit or a specialized division. 63% involved at its origin, at the original conflict, inappropriate comments or horseplay, joking in the workplace. And then the 56% had retaliation as a primary cause of action, and this is where the city attorney will close out and classify the cause of action. So what are the harms? Obviously, we've been talking about the financial harms. This is just a quick summary or breakdown of what I just discussed. $38.6 million over the past 3 years, 9 months. Out of the 69 total, 23 had no payouts at all, meaning either they were dismissed or there was a judgment in our favor. 16 had payouts under $100,000, and the 30 lawsuits over $100,000, just like we talked about, $37.2 million, or 96% of the payout amount. When we break up that $32 million, 21 of those 30 cases were settled before trial, which is $20 million. And so the average payout when we settle a case is approximately a little less than $1 million. And then 5 of the cases went to trial, and then we had an adverse jury finding where we paid out $10 million. So we're finding that if we go to trial and we get an adverse jury finding, we're paying about $2 million per case. So there is some advantage to settling before we go to trial if we for several reasons, but that's a decision that the city attorney will make. And then we had 4 cases that went to trial, adverse findings, and we did a settlement for $6.2 million. Okay, additional harms. Other than financial harms, which is the obvious in-your-face harm, there's also research that should...
Can I ask you one quick question on those?
Yes, sir.
Any of them where body-worn was used as evidence in the trial, or is it too early?
Not in the, these are employment-related suits, so there would not have, this is just strictly employment-related suits, so there would be no body worn involved in that, at least directly.
Okay. And so some of the studies that we've looked into show that workplace conflict also is a significant contributor to physical harm or workplace stress, increased sick leave, workers' compensations claim for heart and blood pressure type of issues. Organizationally, obviously, when you're focusing all your efforts internally on dealing with things in the workplace, you're not focusing on the community. You have low morale, low job satisfaction. All these things impact how we serve the community and how we function as an organization. So those are the harms that directly impact workplace conflict. And this is what our analysis showed us. This is kind of what we learned from looking at these lawsuits and these claims. So this picture it's a picture of a weed, and it tends to grow if you don't take care of it. So at the very beginning of these workplace conflicts, we find from these lawsuits that there's small things, or I won't even say misconduct, small behaviors that cause small conflicts, inappropriate comments, horseplay, joking that go unaddressed. One day somebody is offended, it creates this conflict in the workplace. That conflict is ignored. It's not addressed, whether supervisors aren't aware of it or don't have the skills to address it appropriately. And then those conflicts turn into first personnel complaints, then claims and lawsuits regarding retaliation, failure to accommodate, discrimination, harassment. So what we've identified is there is an opportunity for us as an organization, if we identify these things early on, to intervene. It's to resolve these conflicts at the most early stages so they don't fester into ongoing conflicts and into these lawsuits and claims. So that's what we've discovered. So the primary solutions that we've identified, first and foremost, was providing skills to our supervisors to resolve conflict, giving them the training they need. And that's through our conflict resolution training at Pepperdine University. As Mr. Himes discussed some additional solutions, we're working closely with the city attorney risk manager, exchanging best practices, keeping informed with trends and patterns with lawsuits and claims. Also, increased outreach by our Ombuds section. They've recently developed a 2-hour block of training that is going to be rolled out in 2016 to supervisors on how to mediate conflicts in the workplace. They've also done some increased outreach on the land system as far as their availability, what they do, and their contact information. Also, messaging is an important part. We want to reach out to the organization in all different methods, and putting messages on the lands, using the Chiefs of Staff's weekly newsletter, racer informational blasts, all these things we've been utilizing. And then, again, more at the executive level management for conflict in the workplace, dealing with more complex conflict issues, is a liability management committee, where we include the city attorney in helping us resolve these issues. Okay, and this is just an overview. So we partnered with Pepperdine University, Strauss Institute for Conflict Resolution, in developing a customized course for law enforcement as it relates to conflict in the law enforcement environment. This institute has been, I believe, ranked #1 in the nation for conflict resolution for the past 11 years. We've had a lot of support from this university. They've taken the time to come and do ride-alongs for, I would say, the past 8 to 9 months, really getting to know the organization, talking to key members, including line personnel, about what they perceive as conflicts in the workplace. We've had the chief come up last week at our first course and speak and give our supervisors the support about managerial courage and leadership, that the expectation is that they intervene, get involved in these conflicts, and that they're supported all the way up the chain. So there's significant movement in this area, and we understand how important it is. We have 43 students in this class. Myself, Mr. Hines, Mr. Olakan, we were all there. We had great feedback. We are planning on a focus group of these students in the next couple weeks here to find out if they've been able to utilize these skills, if they found what they've learned to be effective. And then we're going to start to see for the next class what group of personnel would be most appropriate to attend. Is it going to be the specialized unit supervisors? Is it going to be another geographic area? Because last course was West Bureau. Or is it going to be people that deal with conflict on an everyday basis? Is it going to be those folks from the Workplace Investigation Unit at Internal Affairs? Is it going to be ERG? Is it going to be ombuds? So I just want you guys to know that there's going to be a very strategic approach to selecting people. We're not just going to pick the first available people to go. Okay, this is just an example of this is the flyer that was attached to the training unit. We had Chief's message. We partnered closely with the Police Foundation to help fund this venture. And then this is an example of some of the messaging we're doing internally and throughout the department, just bringing awareness so people are that workplace conflict and stopping it is always on their minds. Okay, and we talked about this. This is working with the risk manager, working closely, constant flow of information, identifying best practices and sharing them. And Mr. Himes is now a member of the Citywide Risk Management Steering Committee, which will help us get insight from what other entities are doing citywide and what we can share what we're doing. And again, the Ombuds outreach, all these things we talked about. If you don't have any questions on these 3 areas, I can move on. Okay. And then just a brief summary on the other 3 areas.
Certainly. Yeah, I just want to touch base very briefly on what we're doing in the other 3 areas and some of the progress that's been made. Again, regarding the use of force, the Chief of Police has communicated throughout the organization the importance of a fundamental reverence for life and ensured that preservation of life training was provided throughout the department. As you've heard, today already, again,
that's the additional training, or is that the training that's already been completed?
That's the training that's been completed, yes. And as you heard today, the rollout of body-worn video cameras continues, as well as an ongoing review of the tactics and tools in the use of force. And again, to increase our options in field encounters, the department's currently ensuring a more widespread field deployment of tasers, and RMD specifically working on training that would recertify all field officers in the use of less lethal equipment. In terms of, as you recall, in our April report, we focused on work-related injuries. The harms pertaining to worker injuries involve interventions and solutions that improve the department's ability to prevent, investigate, and monitor work injuries. The department's enhancing CompStat to include an expanded breakdown of injuries and absences. This includes looking at source of IOD injuries such as foot pursuits, uses of force, and other workplace incidents. There's also a pending interim budget request to add personnel to the medical liaison section to fully implement the department's injury and illness prevention program. The additional personnel will be used to staff a risk assessment unit within the medical liaison section. That unit conducts a more comprehensive investigation when certain new claims are received. We're also, in conjunction with the city attorney and CEO, we're developing a course for injury prevention and as well as additional supervisory training to help identify work comp fraud. We're enhancing initial supervisory investigation of claims and initiating letters to the treating physicians to inform them of available light duty assignments to help facilitate a return to work. But finally, I think where we're really making some significant headway is regarding our employee-involved traffic collisions. As of September 30th, our TCs are down 18% from prior years, and serious injuries are also down significantly. we continue to pursue employee awareness and supervisory oversight on the use of seatbelts and safe driving. I mentioned earlier the repeated messaging and types of things we're doing, and I think we have a couple of flyers that have been out. This one is just going out now. All of these initiatives involve coordination with the Risk Management Division and our problem-solving teams and the City Attorney's Office and the CAO. It's an ongoing collaboration which we believe will have positive results over time. We're available to answer any questions that you are. And the lessons that we've learned I think are reflected in the report. We identified that the specialized units are where most of the problems arise. They work closely together, and sometimes over an extended period of time. Things start to get under people's skin. There's comments that are made that may or may not be inappropriate. Bannering. That conflict then is allowed to fester without any type of intervention. There's some type of triggering event that occurs. Perhaps it's a non-promotional event. Perhaps they're high conflict personalities, those types of things that come into play. And it results in a personnel complaint or a civil suit. So it does come back to that lesson learned is that that prevention issue right from the very beginning, where we teach people what's appropriate in the workplace, we teach them what resources are available. If the conflict does occur, it's that early intervention piece. And then if it does go, because they're a high conflict personality and they're just not going to take no for an answer. When it gets to litigation, we try to mitigate that along with the Office of the City Attorney.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
If I can just add to that, one of the things that we did learn was that oftentimes as an organization, we get caught up making decisions in a bubble without knowing the big picture. So we've really been increasing the usage of the Liability Management Committee, and that's basically getting all the decision makers that had any input or information about a certain incident or employee or a conflict in the same room, meeting with the city attorney, discussing all of our options and providing recommendations to the CO. And I believe that's helped in curb some potential claims or litigation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Do we have any comment cards?
We have 3 comment cards. We have Wayne, Yvonne, Michelle Autry, and Lee.
Yes, what you failed to put in your report was what happened at the end of last week's meeting with our good hot-headed friend Mr. Soboroff accosting a public speaker. That is not what you would call risk management good practices, and it's definitely not harm reduction. Yeah, how about harm elimination? You're willing to harm. You just want to reduce it a little bit. So Pepperdine University, yes, they're in the hood, in the Malibu hood, over there, got their ocean view over there. Yeah, they understand the urban setting. Yes, you just go over there, Las Virgenes and PCH, you'll see the hood. Oh, it's a depressed area. Oh, it's just horrible. All those poor multimillionaires in those little shacks on the beach. I feel so bad for them. They should have bigger homes. So, risk management and harm reduction. Every time these cops sue and get money, good. Because they're just the pawns in this sick fucking game that you're playing. They're just men and women. They put on a badge, like Chris Dorner. They're given the rah, 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 and then they enter the department and they learn it's all politics. All of it. Nobody's allowed to be a whistleblower in the LAPD. And when you do get whistleblowers, like in Chicago, thank God for those people. Because eventually in this department, you will get enough whistleblowers. They will shut this fucking place down, and they will stop this terrorism that's going on. Because this is domestic terrorism against homeless, African Americans, and everyone else that's not Steve Soboroff, his banker, friend, or business associate or law partner. That's all it's about. Let's eliminate harm rather than just trying to reduce it and fake it.
Yeah, I agree. As peace officers, there shouldn't be any reports of ideally of racial profiling or bias policing. Again, I like to remind those of you, not just of Jewish descent, but the neo-Nazi Gestapo were masters at using not just terrorism, fear tactics prior to the actual attempted extermination and genocide of the Jewish people, who were also experimented on as well as tortured. Eugenics, genetic experiments, and the attempt to create and propagate a master white race, notwithstanding the genetic experiments which are proliferating today, which is one reason why the DNA is required of most of the inmates. So you can probably use the DNA again in cloning and in generating copies and lookalikes of those of us who do not speak up and challenge your authority and maintenance of the status quo, whether it is white supremacy, white male supremacy, Zionist, Jewish supremacy. Again, just to expose any criminal presence within the department, which is supposed to serve and protect. Encouraging police officers, please do expose police officers that are policing because of their own agendas to destroy, to exterminate, to torture, to harass, to rape, per ritual, whether it's required of your fraternal ritual and abusing a woman and raping and killing a woman to be moved up into a higher position, brothers, the pedigree, house niggas moving up to your levels of gatekeeping, whatever that is, the big brother. This needs to be eliminated because this is a systemic maintenance of the status quo. Okay, and again, if you just stop incriminating the whistleblowers, we can move towards that end. Okay. Lee? Okay, there are no.
So we have harm reduction. I want to know, if you have harm reduction, why are so many people being harmed? And I'd just like to say hello to the Chief Beck. Glad you're back here. I'm still one of the only activists that don't want to see you go. I want to see you do your job. You've done your job before. You put that bastard Stephanie Lazarus in jail when the other chiefs wouldn't do it. When you came in, you opened a new investigation, and that bastard went to jail. You put Henry Solis in jail, so I know you put murdering cops in jail.
Mr. Jenkins, you're off topic. Can you please get back to the topic at hand?
Let's go back to harm. Harm and harm reduction. Now, when you say harm reduction, do you deal with cops who are suffering from mental illness? Is that part of your strategy, to deal with cops who are suffering from mental illness, post-traumatic stress disorder, cops ready to, they got that Barney Fife thing going. Andy, Andy, you got those cops, they're ready to go. They're ready to blow. Ezell Ford, he ran into two of them. Man's laying in the grave now. So you have to do something about cops suffering from mental illness, post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a recognized mental illness, recognized by the American Psychiatric Association. I'm sorry, I got to tell cops that. They don't know that. It isn't recognized mental illness, people. And guess what? People die because men with guns and badges and use their uniforms to hide their mental illness. They go out. I want you to think about the worst day in your life where you were ready to just kill somebody. I mean, you could really kill somebody. I mean, you're ready to murder somebody, and then somebody said, here's a badge and a gun and uniform. Go police the streets. What would you think you would do that day? Somebody's going to die that day. You can't make your mortgage payments. Your kids are bastards.
There are no other comment cards on this item.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Take your pick. Kathleen.
Mr. President, are we going to go back to item number 2?
We will go back to the Chief's report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
I'll make my report brief. Thank you for delaying it. We had a difficult weekend. 11 people were shot in the city of Los Angeles. 2 of those died. We also had 2 other homicides. That brought us to an 11% increase year-to-date in homicides. It's also 12% over 13, but it is about 6% below 12. because I report an increase in crime this year, I think it's important to put in perspective that crime is still at historic lows. It's just that we're dealing with some what may turn out to be the lowest crime years in LA's history last year and the year before. Gang-related crime is up in the city of Los Angeles about 16%. Gang-related homicides up 9.7%. Property crime up overall about 10.9%. And shootings are up, individuals shot up about 16%. We're paying very close attention to what's going on in the rest of California. All the major cities show varying degrees of crime increases, some greater than the cities of Los Angeles, some less. It will be interesting to see how the end-of-year reports come, and of course that is soon to be released for the city of Los Angeles. Traffic collisions also up in the city of Los Angeles overall. Serious traffic collisions, those that cause injury and death, however, are down about 4.5%. Motor vehicle versus pedestrian accidents, which have been one of our focuses, either through engineering or enforcement, are up overall 1.6%, but are down in serious instances by about 6.4%. Personnel status are 9,882 police officers on payroll. We also have 34 recruits in the academy who are not yet on payroll, so that puts us over the 9,900 mark. 2,668 civilian personnel with 609 civilian vacant positions. We had
know offhand where we are in terms of the recruitment goals for the year, approximately.
Well, our goal was to get up over 10,000 to 10,040. We're going to end up about 100 short. So, that's all based on recruitment. So we'll end up being about 100 short of where we would have preferred to be. As you know, recruitment and hiring is a hybrid between the Los Angeles Police Department and personnel. There is some declination of applicants, but we also want to be able to speed up the process so we can be a more competitive entity as compared to the other large hiring agencies, and we also want to make sure that we have requirements that make sense and that we're not disqualifying people who we should qualify. We're working with the new GM over at personnel and trying to infuse more investigative resources from the Los Angeles Police Department into the background process, and so far that is going slow, but at least it's going. So hopefully next year will be a better year. And next year we have significant hiring needs. We're going to have to hire well over 450 folks to stay even. So it's going to be an uphill battle next year. But I think that we have made some changes in the system which will allow us to bring more people through it. So hopefully that comes to fruition.
Thank you.
And we had a cadet graduation this past Saturday. Thank you for President Johnson for being there. Although I got to say that going to a cadet graduation is its own reward.
Yes, it is.
There's really nothing better than that. And just to give you an idea, we have 6,834 cadets in the program. And I told Chief Paysinger, unfortunately, Chief Paysinger will retire before we see this, but my goal is to one day have actually more cadets than we have police officers. And at the rate we're going, we will. And if they didn't have to leave when they were 21, we would have surpassed it already. And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Chief, anything else you can tell us about what's going on with LAUSD?
Oh, absolutely. I can. The
New York thing and everything.
Sure, I'd be glad to address that if the commission wants to hear. But I wasn't sure what Chief Paysinger had told you. So early this morning, very, very early this morning, we became aware of online email threats that were received by multiple members of the school board. The threats were very specific to LA Unified School District campuses, named all of them, inferred that high schools were the primary target, stated that explosives had already been put into place, and that after the explosives went off, that they would be followed by a number of individuals with ISIS connections who would use small arms, including AK-47s and machine pistols, to cause further loss of life within the school district, and all this was specifically targeted for today. We immediately began an investigation, brought the FBI in, major crimes, and the FBI are embedded with each other in counterterrorism units. They began their investigation in order to try to vet this threat and give it some validity or not. They were able to trace it to a server that was tied to Germany. However, was also a place where people from all over the world could buy in to the internet. So it was not clear that, even though the server was in Germany, it was not clear where the origination point was. So we supplied all that information and more to the school board members and to Superintendent Cortinas. It is their decision and their decision alone whether or not the schools stay open. We gave them our best counsel. We gave them the best investigative information we had. About 5:45 this morning, they made the decision to close the schools. Then our task becomes to support them in doing that. So that's what the Los Angeles Police Department has been doing, and trying to support that. We are conducting inspections of the schools as best we can. As you all know, there's 1,280 schools in an LA Unified School District. It is a huge task, especially when it's searching for small items like an explosive. So inspection is probably a better word for that. FBI and my JTTF task force, Joint Terrorism Task Force members are continuing to vet this out. Hopefully we'll have enough information that the school district can make an informed decision about tomorrow's school day in the near future. The mayor and I did a press conference at 10 o'clock with this information in it, and we push forward. You asked about the New York piece. I think that what I would say is this, is that everybody has to operate within their own reality, and our reality in Southern California was recently shaped by San Bernardino and its instances, and the superintendent and his folks have to make a decision with that in mind. And the other thing is that it's very easy to second guess decision makers when you don't have to live with the consequences of the decision, and they do. Superintendent Cortinas oversees a school district with 640,000 students and over 100,000 staff, and he has to make his decisions based on their safety. And these decisions are not something you get to do over again if you turn out to be wrong. So, the Los Angeles Police Department, I can't tell you, and I won't tell you which decision I would have made had it been mine, but it's not mine. It is my role and my privilege to support the school district and the safety of our young people when that decision is made.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we have, yes, sir, we have 6 cards. We have the Red Chief Hunt. He's not here. We have Jojo Smith. Jojo Smith is not here. Jamie Garcia, she's not here. There's a card for Azal Ford, Mr. Jenkins. We have Mr. Herman and Wayne.
Prentice Jenkins, activist since 1991, City Life newsletter. Chief, that's probably some pimple-faced kid who wasn't prepared for his finals today. So he screwed it up for 640,000 kids. We continue to talk about this subject, but in reality, where are we at?
Chief's report.
Chief's report. Oh, okay, yeah. In reality, we went back, okay? In reality, what's going to happen? Let me tell you what's going to happen. What happened in San Bernardino, workplace violence. Guess what? Those people are crazy. But guess what's going to happen? Mark my words. One day, the active shooter will be a police officer. You have to come after your own. One day, the active shooter will be some crazy fireman. You'll have to come after those fools because they're psychotic. It's going to be one of those psychos up in your helicopter that crashes the helicopter into my building because he fell in love with me. Yeah, it's going to happen. I won't be there, but he'll do it. So when you talk about significant incidents, folks, are those things that happen in San Bernardino, or things that will continue to happen again. Chief, you're going to be busy. You're going to be busy next year. Oh, America's not done with active shooting. We love it. We love it like we love alcohol and drugs and lap dances. Steve, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, lap dances. Come on. Well, the ones I got were from 20 years ago. But you know what I'm talking about, Steve. Active shooters. It's going to happen. It's going to happen one day. It's going to be your cops. You're going to have to go after your own. I'm telling you, mark my words here. And as far as El Nino's going, it's going to wash away all them black poor folks on those sidewalks. Don't worry about that. You won't have to get rid of them. El Nino will get rid of them.
Wayne?
You got to do the surrender. Yes. How much since 2001 have we spent on this Homeland Security machine? It's so good that somebody in their underwear in Asia can use a German server and shut down every fucking school district in Los Angeles. I was driving my car this morning listening to KFI. I had the best fucking laugh and chuckle I made. You know, they're arresting me and charging me with trying to charge me with crimes, and you guys just don't see the big picture. You can't tell a credible threat from an incredible threat. You've taken all of our civil rights away, starting with George fucking W. Bush and his planes in those fucking buildings, a false flag. And then 14 years later, we're jacking ourselves off, taking our goddamn shoes off and our belts up and our keys off and being searched like fucking animals while people with a government badge that work for a government wave right through security. That's why San Bernardino happened. If you just would have let him Iqbal put his bag in the metal detector, you would have saw the 19 fucking weapons in the bag, and you would have stopped him and said, Iqbal, brother, what are all these guns for? It's a Christmas party. They don't go to be for the mosque. They go to be for the mosque. And then you would have called your legal counsel and said, well, you got to let him in. It's religious discrimination. If you don't let Iqbal in the party with his 19 assault weapons, let him in. But at least we would have known. But when you work for the government, you just show your badge and they wave you right the fuck through. Go to the federal building, right through. Everybody, right through. So all you got to do, terrorists, work for the government, get a government ID, walk in, and bring your shit and have fun.
Mr. Herman?
From Ezell Ford to ISIS, to a city that's falling apart. Where do we go, Mr. Charlie Beck? Where do we go? It's Christmas time. Officers of filing rank need that significant raise so that the new year of 2016 will protect the lives of your constituents, the people that you claim to serve, protect. But the Los Angeles Police Department has been on the news more frequently with the issues of shooting people in the back, shooting people deliberately in the back. And I'm talking about not the white people that live on the other side of the 405, Mr. Sobroff. I'm talking about the people that live in the east side. Watts, San Pedro and 5th Street, Boyle Heights, El Sereno. They're criminalized because there's an injustice system that stalks people of poverty. The war on homelessness is a war on crime with those in the police department who initiate harming homeless people on our streets. Why do you regulate them? Ninth Circuit ruled, stop effing with homeless people. They are part of our community. You've created the discrimination, biased discrimination towards them, because they're individuals with invisible disabilities who unfortunately live on our sidewalk and streets on a daily basis. Because the city of Los Angeles lacks its performance, its duty, its responsibility as mayor to conduct business on behalf of the public's concern and public trust.
There are no other cards on this item. We're now on number 5, public comment period. We have 8 cards. We have the Red Chief Hunt. He's not present. We have Jacqueline Richardson, Mather Baggy, Brenda Glenn, Mr. Herman, Wayne, Yvonne Michelle Autry, and Ted Hayes. Miss Richardson? I don't have a card for you.
I didn't hear my name, folks. I'm on there. I put a card on there. Well, maybe use the broadcast. I have a card on public comment.
Does Baco want his job back? The prostitution industry shortens lives. In late 1990s, San Bernardino Police Department had a prostitution ring that was shut down by the then mayor of Los Angeles. Right now, downtown San Bernardino is a ghost town. Many of the mom and pop businesses are all dried up. Some of the biggest stores down there are the 99-cent store and Stater Brothers. In 2003, a girl from Gardena said Rialto Police Department registered prostitutes. She may have been a Russian girl. She was white. In early 2000s, the Los Angeles Times newspaper reported that LAPD and the Skid Row area had prostitutes visiting. Recently, one source reported that was ongoing. This may have been a holograph. Holographs do not always know what they're talking about. The easiest way to prevent these moral dilemmas is for the wife to fix her husband dinner, and stop criticizing him and telling him what to do. The dinner, the non-criticism, and telling him what to do should cut these moral problems in half.
Next.
Mather Baggy. Mather, is there someone? Okay, Brenda Glenn.
I forgot. Yeah. T-Fane. I'm here all week.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, we're going to play let's do a little show and tell.
Raping several women while on duty. A horrible abuse of power that went on for months against especially vulnerable women until one of them refused to be silent. We got the story tonight from NBC's Gabe Gutierrez.
Defendant is guilty of the crime of...
As the verdict was read, former Oklahoma City police officer Daniel Holtzclaw sobbed.
Guilty of the crime of rape in the first degree and punishment is set at 30 years.
The jury finding him guilty on 18 of 36 counts, including rape and sexual battery.
36 counts. Now, this young lady said that cops were stalking her. I just come up with a stalking. One of his charges was stalking and rape of 8 women. They were all black. He knew where to go get them. This man has been convicted of stalking women. Woman was just in here talking about cops stalking her. Yeah, so we know what that woman just said was true. Cops do stalk women. Gay cops stalk men. They stalk me. The homosexual cops in the helicopter flying over your house, trying to get a thermal image. See if you got your junk out. Huh? Is the stereotype true? Yeah. It is hilarious. You're right, T. Fink. It's true, but it's still hilarious. That cops act like children. They act like ninth graders. You can get there are cops that act like little children. And that's why I treat cops like children. I don't see them as authority figures. Don't get me wrong. I respect them as authority, but I don't see them as authority. I see them like children. Because if you act like a child, I will treat you like a child. I don't care if you got a uniform or a badge. It does not matter to me. If you act like a child, I will treat you like a child. Oh, he's handsome. Let me go. Ezell Ford's handsome. Let's go check him out. Just grab his stuff, see how big it is. And he fought him back. And he
Next.
Raghu Mathur, followed by Mr. Herman.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters of the Commission. My name is Raghuveer Mathur, and I have a particular intention to come before the Commission. After 9/11, I cried like a weeks together when I saw that thousands of people were dead. I said, what you are doing? I asked myself, what is your duty? You are a citizen. So I put up a foundation, anti-terror, anti-crime zone. And what is the anti-terror, anti-crime zone was doing? I was going to the preschools, schools, colleges, factories, and telling my group and telling the people, please don't do any crime. What is crime? I'm telling the children. I've been doing this job. I was basically an engineer, and because of my bad eyes, I left the job and took this job as a full-time job. I started in New York and then moved to Los Angeles. I'm going to area, and they're going to talking to the people. But in Los Angeles, saw that the people are telling, Mr. Mathur, Mr. Raghu, you are telling me to do this. When we go to the police, they don't listen to me. They don't know nothing. I say, you should go to the higher-ups. They will definitely listen to you. They say, no, it's useless, that don't stop it. But I did not stop my job. Why I'm here, 2-3 weeks back, I came to my room and saw somebody has removed the property worth $4,000. And I was very disturbed because I'm not making any money. And these days I'm spending all the time to all this, my foundation work. I asked my neighbors, nobody replied. So I went to the West Valley Police Station and talked to the Lieutenant Captain Kelly. He didn't like my face. He said, well, 1 minute, 2 minutes, you move out of that house. And I said, how can I move out?
Thank you, sir. Next.
Mr. Herman.
I have something to give it to them.
Followed by Wayne, Yvonne, and Mr. Hayes.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Herman's cold is affecting his speech, so I'm here to say to all of you, you heard our testimony for the day, and the Inspector General is coming down with a cold. He hasn't said a word. And Mr. Sobroff is still looking like Jack Lambert or someone from the Steelers. I don't know.
It's called a quarterback. All right.
Anyways, stop interrupting me, Herman. Oh, no. Well, anyways, the whole point is...
You can't have two people up there at once, Herman. So if you really believe there's two people up there, one of them's got to sit down. If you don't, go ahead.
Are you bipolar, Steve? Obviously, you're bipolar.
Just worried about you.
Don't worry about me, Steve. I got your back. I got the back of every constituent by patting your wall up with developers. We're still going to vote no against all the developers, Steve. All the development you've created, Steve, no matter what. And we're going to take this with Little Man Syndrome, Herb Wesson from the city of L.A., who can only climb onto his bed when he has a step stool because his wife kicks him off every time. See, Steve, we can be funny during general public comment, not so serious on matters that relate to the public's concern. It takes a puppet to know a puppet, and I can talk directly with you. See, I got Mr. Herman trained so well that he makes critical 54954.3 parentheses C's remarks about you. See, the Brown Act does affect you. as it implies to everyone. So Merry Christmas, Steve. Let's decorate our trees with alcohol and soybean so that every child in every city cannot know that there's no peace without you, Steve. Good night.
Wayne.
Yeah, it's a good thing for cameras. We had an out-of-control Sheila Kuehl on the Board of Supervisors. This always happens, I don't know why. But essentially what she did was, it's on the internet, last Tuesday's Board of Supervisors meeting at public comment, she went to a public speaker, interrupted him, and said, "Look, you asshole, I'm a Jew. My mother was a Jew. My father was a Jew." And we keep seeing these outbursts and vicious, virulent attacks. For example, you just accused Mr. Herman and the puppet of being bipolar. That's slander. That's libelous because you're stating a fact. You didn't say it's my opinion. You said he's bipolar. Now the police commission and the city of Los Angeles have another liability claim because you're not allowed under the Ralph M. Brown Act to attack a speaker for speaking at a public meeting. And you don't get it. See, Steve, you don't get it. And that's why Matt walked out of the room, because Matt Johnson's tired of this. And he's just going to go to his car. He's not going to sit here and listen to this crap because he knows it's illegal. He's an attorney. That's all they do over there at his law firm. They handle these $1 million lawsuits and shit. So he's not going to sit there and listen to this. He's not going to watch these violations. He's going to get out of the room because he doesn't want to be sued later personally because he didn't stop it. He can't stop it because Steve Soboroff is the chairman of the board. He's the banker. He built this building. He owns the Los Angeles Protective League and the foundation that gives all those body cameras. So good for you, Matt Johnson. You walked out. You got out of here. You told these people silently to F off. Thank you, Matt Johnson.
Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Is this the last speaker?
And then Mr. Hayes. And then
okay.
We do have comment cards for closed session. Go ahead.
Oh, shoot.
So I believe this is the last meeting one of the last meetings before the day that we recognize is the gift that God had given us. Let's all try to magnify the Most High. And I don't know if you all know the history of just post the Holocaust. America gave sanctuary to neo-Nazi war criminals who were called neo-Nazi war heroes, and many of them became civil servants. They also fled to Argentina. I do know that America supports Israel, and from my experience, notwithstanding diversionary tactics, I know that there are terrorists, but my issue right now are the terrorists who are employed by the country as counterintelligence, CIA, FBI, and then, of course, the police, undercover, off-duty police officers who maintain the status quo by criminal means. And I do believe that many of them are Nazis, notwithstanding, of course, alcohol, tobacco, firearm, mafia. That's, of course, in the secular. And but what I wanted to focus on was, again, America, Israel, Zionist Jewish people who are synagogues of Satan, the America's support, and in the presence of that neo-Nazi kind of white supremacist mentality, which might actually be the impetus for the assaults on black people, people of color, poor people. And this is what needs to be exposed and what needs to be stopped. Again, because of my color, I'm not to be used as the Sally Heming sex goddess Venus to your people's fulfillment of your fantasy, which has existed, again, for about 400 years, an incrimination of the victims or of your fantastic sexual exploitation, which Mr. Prentice is always so good in exposing. You like to hide and blame us for your sexual indulgence of your fantasies.
Mr. Hayes?
We won't stop until you do.
Mr. Hayes?
Let me try to simplify this from the ground up. if a patrol officer encountered a person who had a mental disability, could he demand that person become sane as he relates to the officer? Of course not. When people come to this podium, you can't demand that they be sane. You can't demand they be coherent or intelligent. You cannot do that.
We're not.
Okay? So when you say they're not speaking on the topic for 2 lousy minutes, excuse them if they go nuts for 2 lousy minutes. I try to tell you that, but you won't listen. You keep trying to correct their behavior, their attitude, and their language and their speech. It may not be possible. Now, 3 lawyers on this panel, and on the duties of an attorney is the duty of an attorney to do all the following in number A. A is support the Constitution and laws of the United States of America and of this state. Well, that's the Brown Act. Now, there are 2 kinds of crimes you can commit. One is a crime of commission, and the other is a crime of omission. When these 3 lawyers on this panel do not vote, do not consolidate their efforts when the law requires them to do that, that's the crime of omission. So the state bar is going to have to hear about the fact they will not do their professional duty. Now, the worst thing that ever happened here was when the city attorney took over the meeting and demanded people had to face the commissioners. Stand at attention and face the commissioners. Do not look at the audience. Do not... That's outrageous. That kind of behavior cannot be demanded either. Nobody can demand crazy people be sane when they come before you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
That's the last card on item number 5. We're now on item number 6, closed session. We have 3 cards on 6A1. We have a card for Angie Guzman, Mr. Prentice, Wayne Hitler, and Mr. Herman.
Prentice Jenkins, activist since 1991, publisher of City Life newsletter, and an absolute supporter of Israel. Will always be a supporter of Israel. No disrespect. I don't like everything Israel's doing, but...
Yeah, you're, stay on topic, or...
I'm sorry.
Sit down.
Okay. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Last warning. Last warning?
Last warning?
Yeah.
Okay. So dismissal. Is it possible for the board to dismiss the vice president? And I'm also jealous. You invited
So
Wayne.
you can take your seat now?
Is it possible for the
I'm
board
going to ask you to leave.
No, I still got a minute.
No,
and
you
9
don't.
seconds.
You're
Yeah,
off
I do.
topic.
You're not the president.
I'm going to ask you to
Where's the
leave.
president at? What happened to the president?
Will you please remove
I'm
him
going to
from the room?
continue
Gentlemen,
to talk.
thank you.
I have 1 minute.
No,
I
you
can
don't.
Continue to talk.
Next speaker.
Thank you. My time is not up. It's 57.
Next
Speaker is Wayne.
I have 53 seconds.
Oh, you were given your warnings.
So wait a minute. You people going to throw me out?
Yes, sir. You're done. Next speaker, please. Next speaker.
Wayne Spindler.
Next speaker. On topic, please. On topic. Would you like to stay in the room?
Yes.
It's your last warning?
Oh, boy. Well, you know how things are with public employee discipline matters. Dismissal, release, public employee performance evaluations. But we have a panel here that's not legally capable or allowable to make that determination. As the prior speaker tried to say before he was lynched, there is no president of the commission, and I didn't hear an order giving anybody authority to take over the meeting for him. So the city attorney, the attorney for this commission, better get his head out of his ass and make that determination whether or not your panel has no conflicts and they are now capable of making these determinations on these 6 police officers. because you got 2 Sergeant 2s, 2 Police Officer 3s, and 4 Police Officer 2s involved in an officer-involved shooting, and they want to know if they're going to keep their badge. They don't want to fuck around. They want to know if they're going to keep their badges and be able to pay their mortgage or whether they're going to join the homeless. This is where you come in, Charlie Beck. You got a panel here out of control. They're absolutely out of control, and they're making decisions for your cops. You've got to stand in and protect your cops. This panel here is incapable. They need to be recused, and an independent evaluator needs to step in and handle OIS number 005-15 because of the conflicts of interest, the appearance of bias, and the allegations that 3 of the attorneys on this panel are subject to barred potential discipline for violating the very Brown Act that structures these meetings. So it's up to the police chief. Show us that you can protect good cops and the ones who have a presumption of innocence before guilt is imposed.
Next.
Mr. Herman?
Okay, start.
Public employees, discipline and dismissal, a relationship of public employers and employees by their performance and evaluations. I can't top the note of the last speaker, Mr. Spindler, because the arrogance of this commission has deliberately separated itself from the chief of police and itself. Is that unconstitutional, or does it just reflect a discipline between this commission that says to the police chief, you have no say-so? But yet, we have all these officers in here ready to engage in our dismissal from a public meeting. I feel threatened already. The same way Krikorian kicked me out of a meeting.
Stay on topic,
about
please.
Cameras that can videotape this potential evaluation by officers who are involved in these issues of government affairs under Code 54957. It sounds like a Brown Act number to me, Mr. City Attorney. Would you agree? Or am I an a-hole to talk about 54954.3.c?
Is that a question?
Ask me. Tell me.
All those in favor?
Yes, you are one.
Thank you. It takes another to know one.
Okay, we had 2 comment cards on 6A2. We have Wayne and Mr. Herman.
Stay right on this one item, right?
Yes, this is the headlock.
Okay.
The OISs.
Which one is this?
Oh, yes. Today's victims, 1 police officer 3, 1 police officer 2. Who are these men? What is this about? Officer-involved shooting. Well, who's going to talk about the officer-involved shooting? 3 lawyers on the panel, all breaking the law in having this meeting. Now, they're not going to talk about whether they have an appearance of bias or an appearance of impropriety, rendering them incapable of hearing the matter and recusing themselves from the matter based on today's misconduct in this meeting or apparent misconduct in this meeting. These 3 lawyers should know better. Now, Steve Soboroff is not a lawyer. He went over there to Phoenix and got his master's in redevelopment, which is good. And then the other one at the end there, she runs a nonprofit. It's an expert in business, but in legal affairs, no. So you have 3 experts in the law, 2 law professors. These are certified bar
Topic,
experts.
last warning.
So under 6A2, are these 2 officers going to get a fair and impartial hearing, or can they have these members recuse themselves from the panel? Charlie Beck, please protect your police officers. I'm sure Whether they're guilty or not, we don't know. But let's get to the truth. The officer involved shooting either was outside of policy or inside of policy. I don't have to like it or not like it, but let the process be fair. The process is not fair. It's not fair when you have this kind of thing going on. Matt Johnson's not even here to speak for himself. So you have 4 members, a potential 2-2 tie.
Herman,
who's going to break the
disrupting the
tie?
meeting. Last warning, and I'm going to ask you to leave.
Well, Herman is just kneeling. That's symbolic free speech. Check it up under the Brown Act.
Next speaker.
Code section 54957. 1 police officer, 2. 1 police officer, 1. An omission to this disgraceful public employee discipline dismissal. Well, I object until there is a process called due process for these officers to have correct political litigation on their behalf indiscriminately, substantially in their favor for due process. Now, am I on topic with 54950? Anyways, the public's evaluation should be a process and matter given to the chief of police. Because when Ralph M. Brown wrote legislation that politically puts us in place and in favor of the law, in all due respects, it did not say quality through continuous lack of improvement, nor did it say
off topic
integrity to public employees' discipline or dismissal in all we say and do. Off topic, but I am politically correct. In my closing last 25 seconds, I'm going to pray for the officers and for every officer in uniform here today that a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope things go well under Code Section 54957, because no officer should not be questioned by the chief of police before going into the criminal element of the war on corruption.
So, okay.
6B, we have Wayne and Mr. Herman. Yeah. This is the last one, yes.
Now we have 6B. This is directly a Charlie Beck matter. Now, last time, Paysinger was sitting in the chair, and I said, you can't take up this matter. You cannot have the person accused without facing their accusers. Finally, Charlie Beck is going to be able to face these 4 commissioners. Because it's like in the movie where there were 15 commandments and you broke a tablet. No, there's 10 commandments. Now there's 4 commissioners. Next thing you know, there'll be 3 commissioners. So in the event of a tie, who's going to break the tie? And what happens if it's a 2-2 vote? Well, a 2-2 vote would constitute an abstention and no discipline filed. So complaint file number 14-003683, I don't have a copy of the complaint. However, now the chief can go in there and talk to the commissioners now, which they'll do in private, and tell them, look, assholes, I'm doing my job. I'm out there fighting terrorism in these schools. Why am I being here when I could be out in the field with this fucking 1 complaint for dismissal, release, public employee informants? He's going to tell you, fire me or support me. So you have 2 choices when you walk in there. Fire Police Chief Beck or support Police Chief Beck. You fire Police Chief Beck, you got no one that's going to take this job. You'll have to hire me as the interim police chief. Interim Police Chief Wayne from Encino, my God. I mean, I'll wear those 4 stars, and these people will leave the fucking country. So you don't want to do that. You got to stick with him. He's all you got. He's not a bad man, really, but he's all you got.
Mr. Herman?
Is the last speaker?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Item B, a discussion of possible board action and the separation of our police, Charlie Chief, to comment and consider the disciplinary action to dissolve this action. What investigation concerning complaint file number 14-003683, Government Code Section 54957. Isn't this irrelevant to what the discussion, which will take place and occur behind closed doors? Why not give the chief the authority now to make his decision so that the officer doesn't have to go on stress leave and file a suit of discrimination based on disability because of the long term of this public employee discipline dismissal release? See, Mr. Soboroff, it takes intelligence to figure small things out. Chief Charlie Beck was elected by the people for the people to make decisions based on the law, just brought out under AB. But no one here wants to hear whether or not this so-called propriety of investigating officers' discipline will go any further than what we've spoke about today. If Chief Charlie Beck can't cut and paste his action today, then I elect Mr. Spindler as Chief of Police.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 6A and B in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Chief's recommendations.
Okay, the Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We're back in open session. In closed session, item number 6A1 was discussed and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 6A2 was discussed and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. And in closed session, item number 6B was discussed. Mr. Vice President, is there a motion for adjournment?
All in favor? Second. Tammy, watch this.
As car manufacturers introduce a new generation of electric vehicles in the Los Angeles auto market, the LA Department of Water and Power wants our customers to get charged up about driving EVs. So we've introduced the Charge Up LA rebate program to make it more affordable to get your home EV ready.
It's important that Los Angeles lead the way in adopting electric cars because we are the car capital of the world.
Charge Up LA offers a cash rebate of up to $2,000 for out-of-pocket expenses for a new home EV